Everybody. Good evening. It is Thursday, April 3rd, 2025. This is a meeting of the Council Rock School District Board of School Directors Facilities Committee. I'm chairing this evening Ed Tate School Board, and we'll go around the table to my right and introduce ourselves, please.
Yota Piley, School Board.
Matthew McCarthy, Tech Integration.
Linda Stone, School Board.
Nicole Khan, School Board.
Bob Whitty, School Board.
Ann Horner, School Board.
Doug Taylor, CHA Consulting.
David Schrader, I'm an architect.
Michael Roosevelt, School Board.
Andy Sanko, Superintendent.
Tony Rapp, Director of Business Administration.
Jessica Binda, Supervisor of Facilities. Tracy Oseki, School Board.
Thank you, everyone. We will start with Ms. Binda, if you would, please.
Thank you. As a reminder, for the most accurate and reliable information concerning our district, please refer to resources, websites, and social media platforms managed by the Council Rock School District. We advise the community to exercise caution when relying on the accuracy of social media and ask the community to verify any social media content with the district for accuracy. If you question what you are seeing, need a fact check, or additional details on a matter, please reach out to the district directly. Our contact information is readily available on our website at www.crsd.org. The agenda for this evening is the number 2 fuel oil and unleaded gasoline bid, the propane bid, diversified refrigeration preventative maintenance, Council Rock High School North Natatorium boiler change order, custodial services RFP, and then continuing with the master plan study conversations. First item is the number 2 fuel oil and unleaded gasoline bid. We received one bid on Thursday, March 6th, and we only received pricing for the floating price. This is in line with previous bids in the last few years. Riggins gave us a price for the number 2 fuel oil of a differential cost per gallon of 45 cents. And the gasoline 87 octane for a floating price of 29 cents per gallon. What the floating price means is that we pay the market price plus the differential cost. So if the floating price is $2, we would, for fuel oil, we would pay $2.45 per gallon. And then for the unleaded gasoline, again, if it was $2, the market price, we would pay $2.29 per gallon. So this year, I don't have the bids back from the IU to compare those. However, standard in our contracts, as always, is the 30-day out. So we would, if the IU came back with a significant savings, we would just say, Riggins notifying you of our 30-day out within our contract, and we would go with the IU. I did verify in the bid, it does say 89 octane. However, Riggins, since they've been our supplier for a number of years, has supplied 87 octane. So moving forward, we'll always make sure that we have 87 in the bid. Since we have one bidder, it doesn't modify any of the other bids. So the floating price for the number 2 is 45 cents, and for the unleaded gasoline, it's 29 cents.
Any questions?
Just to clarify, if you get back with the IU again, we'll be able to go and put in that price.
Yes, yes.
Just one bid? Is that what we got back?
That's what, for the past 2, this is the 3rd year that we've only received one bid for gasoline. We reach out to a number of vendors, but they don't respond to the bid.
So what are other school districts doing? Are they also in this boat?
They are also similar. They receive 1 or 2 bids, the area districts. There's not a whole lot of companies that will distribute this little amount of fuel. A lot of the companies distribute massive amounts to gas stations and stuff like that.
Okay. If nobody has any objection, we'll put it on the agenda for next month. Thank you.
Next item is propane. Historically, we've only had one bid from Wilson Propane. However, we did receive 2 bids on Tuesday, March 11th. So we did receive pricing for the fixed price per gallon and the floating price. However, we are not going to recommend going with the floating price because we don't know what the future brings. And it could, depending on what happens with government, we could see increase with fuel costs. So we believe that going with the fixed price per gallon is a safer option this year. And you can see the fixed price per gallon, Sharp Energy is the low price of $1.38 per gallon for propane. We do have propane at Sulphine Stone, Twining Ford, and we also have a small tank at South for the grounds area. And again, the IU does issue a propane bid. They are currently working on it, so if they get a cheaper price from somebody else other than even Sharp Energy, we can issue the 30-day out for the contract and use the IU cost.
Sounds good. Anyone? No? Okay.
Next is a preventative maintenance agreement for our Airco boilers and water heaters. The Diversified Refrigeration is the local rep for Airco, and they have issued or have given us a price for the 2 boilers at Hillcrest, 2 water heaters at Goodnoe Elementary, the 3 boilers at Newtown Middle, the 3 boilers and 2 water heaters at Holland Middle, and the 2 new boilers at Richboro Elementary. They have held the same price as last year. The only increase are the 2 boilers at Richboro Elementary. So the total cost for the year is $14,612.
Sorry,
Go ahead, Ann.
did you say, is it twice a year? How many times a year?
Twice a year, yes, yes.
Trace?
I was just wondering if why this isn't something that our maintenance staff takes care of.
This is over and above what our maintenance staff does. So Diversified Refrigeration is an Airco representative. So they go through over and above what our maintenance guys do. So in order to get them trained and certified on the Airco equipment, we would have to send them away for extreme training. And because we have all different equipment, it's not something that I would recommend.
Okay.
And for $14,612 a year, it's worth getting them the actual rep for that equipment to come out and take a look at the equipment that we have.
Okay.
Very good question, though.
Yeah, good question. Thank you.
That's just for the maintenance, no parts if there is something found?
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
And next is the North Natatorium boiler change order. So we have completed the boiler for the pool. The pool is being heated by the new boiler now. So a couple of change orders that we have is furnish and install an actuated damper system in breaching. So when we installed the breaching system and the manufacturer came out and reviewed the installation, we were required to put a damper system within the breaching. So the breaching is basically the chimney for the exhaust. So we had to put a damper system in, and then we had to, we didn't have to, we added an additional 3-inch loop in the locker room and boiler supply. This gives us the ability that if this boiler does go down, we can switch over to the loop with the main boilers within the building. So it does give us redundancy for the pool. And then we also had to replace an existing 3-way valve. The 3-way valve was unforeseen because the way it was hooked up previous to the boiler, the water wasn't getting enough heat in order for the 3-way valve to actually work. So once we were heating the water, because what the 3-way valve does is when the water gets to a certain temperature, the 3-way valve switches the direction of the water and bypasses the pool. So when the pool water started to get to temperature, we found out the three-way valve actually no longer works, so we had to replace that in order to not overheat the pool. So it was an add to the contract for general asphalt paving, and yes, it is general asphalt paving. If you guys remember when we approved the project, the company has, over the number of years, probably 40-plus years, has switched to mechanical work more than asphalt work. So it's a change order for them for $33,346.84.
Questions? No? Okay.
Okay, next is the custodial services RFP. We received 6 proposals on Friday, March 14th, and evaluated them. A team of 4 evaluated. It was me and Tony, Ashley, and Gary. So we were able to take a look at them and determined through the review process. Now remember, this is an RFP. This is not a bid. An RFP you do evaluate, so you don't necessarily have to go with low bid. So our evaluation scores came out that ABM, our current vendor, was the highest scoring vendor. So next year, meaning starting in July 1st, there would be an 8.5% increase from the previous year. And then the next 4 years after that would be a 4% increase. So the 4% increase is actually lower than their contractual labor increase. So all of our ABM, or all of our custodial staff are members of 32 VJ. So they do have contractual increases similar to just like our who am I? The teachers have a contractual increase, right? Kind of comparing it to.
Yes.
Yeah, so
Well,
similar to what
depends
like
on the
our,
Depends on the contract.
yeah, like our teachers have a contractual increase. So the custodial staff also has a contractual increase, and it averages about 4.5% each year. So we did a thorough evaluation of all 6 proposals, and like I said, ABM came out to be the lead for, after we sat down and reviewed and made discussions, you know, so we would like to recommend moving forward with continuing our services with ABM.
The optional years on there has been do we have to make that decision now with this contract, or will those options still exist next year?
What we'll do is we would recommend going for the first 3 years. Optional year 1 and 2 that are there, we can make that determination when we get to year 3.
That's a good answer, thank you.
Yeah, so if we vote, what we'll do is, like I said, recommend those 3 years.
Right.
And then come 27, 28, so come this time in 2028, we'll sit down, evaluate, do we want to continue our services with ABM? And then we can either give them the 2 years, or we can give them 1 year. So that's our option.
Great.
Strictly a client option.
Yes, yes.
Oh, good.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Good, Tracy.
What were the scoring criteria, and was price included as a scoring criteria?
price was included as a scoring criteria. And I won't read every single line item and bore you, but one of them was company background and experience, staffing and training, work plan and service approach, cost proposal, compliance with RFP requirements, customer service, and then innovation and value-added services. So we had, each one of those had 2 to 3 questions. I can kind of show everybody that there was 2 to 3 questions within each category. And then each company, all 6 companies we reviewed and ranked. We did a very thorough review of the companies. And like I said, the 4 of us sat down after we independently reviewed them, and then sat down and discussed and totaled all the scores up, and ABM did come out on the top.
And I don't know what the difference would be, and I'm not sure if you would know this, Tony. I mean, that's a nice hefty bump in year 1. So it seems like we're paying for the decreases in years 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Yes.
Because you said contractually they're, you know. Do you know if it would have been cheaper to go lower in year 1 and then maybe just meeting their 4.5% increase in years 2 and 3? Like as opposed to doing 8.2, 4, and 4, could we have done 4.5, 4.5, 4.5 to keep with what their expected increase in costs were? As opposed to us paying for everything up front and then they have the money and they're able to lower their rate 0.5% each year? Or was that not even, this was just the
Well,
proposal?
they make the offer, and we did go back to them and ask for a better offer, and we were told this is their best offer. So, I mean, you know, whether or not, you know, it's kind of, it's still, you know, they know they have us where they have us.
Proverbial.
And, if we were to think about going on our own, that would be exorbitant because of PSERS and that, so.
We did also ask them to explain what their 8.2% increase, where that was coming from. And they said the collective bargaining agreement increase in year 1 is 4.8%. Supply costs affected by inflation of more than 30% compared to 5 years ago. And one thing we did add was a full-time person at STAR. So there was a slight increase from 4 hours to 8 hours. We made that decision based on the needs of STAR and feeling that we needed to spend more custodial time there.
And their reasoning was that their costs have gone up and the contract that we had didn't keep up with those costs, as far as supply costs. So that's why they're trying to bring that, one of the reasons they're bringing that up, and it wouldn't negotiate it out of that year. I mean, not that we talked about that, we did ask for better numbers.
2 more quick questions. One, were they far and away in the matrix better than the other offers?
Can I see the scores?
No, I wouldn't say the score.
Okay. So they were pretty close to one of the other firms. I mean, they weren't like eons away.
Okay.
There were 2 firms that were pretty close, but you know, after we met, I felt that the 4 of us felt that ABM was the best decision for the district.
And then my other question was, we used to, you know, principals and whatnot were supposed to be evaluating their services as we've moved along, you know. And other than probably a couple years ago when there were some issues, I haven't heard anything. Do the administrators at the buildings still evaluate the service? Do we still get them? And I'm assuming those evaluations are at least satisfactory, if not stellar.
So we have modified the way we're doing an evaluation. So when I first started, we were doing an evaluation, and I didn't feel that the way we were evaluating was an accurate representation of the work that was being done. So the way we had a very long conversation about 2 weeks ago about custodial staffing. So the work that they're required to do contractually, we did have some, I want to say issues, but some learning curves with our daytime management. We are now on our 3rd manager, unfortunately, and he's been on board for about a year now. And because that was the biggest complaint, was that they weren't seeing the daytime manager, and there wasn't someone overseeing the staff and making sure that they were doing their work. So we have diligently worked with Robinson to make sure that he's meeting and exceeding expectations. The last thing that we've done is making sure that each building has a ABM binder. So we found 5 schools no longer had their binders, whether they got lost, thrown out, whatever happened. So what a teacher has the ability to do is to, if they have an issue, maybe a kid, the day before had something sticky for snack time, and the desk didn't get wiped off because they oversaw it, whatever the case may be. So they have the ability to write it in the book so that someone can respond. And then when Gary and I are in the schools, or when Robinson's in the schools, we have the ability to double check the book to make sure things are getting handled. And then as a backup, if something's not being handled, most of the secretaries just call us to say, hey, we need this done immediately, and I call Robinson and said, get somebody there now. But if it's something more concerning, they have the ability to put a work order in. In the last year, there's only been, I think, 24 work orders put in across the district. So a lot of it is just verbal communication to say, hey, a kid was sick in the bathroom, we need somebody to be there immediately, or I might get a phone call in the morning, hey, there was an event in the cafeteria and the tables didn't get wiped down. So I have the ability to call Robinson, hey, get your day lead in there and wipe the tables down. Minor stuff like that. So we are making sure that we're working with the principals as well to make sure that they fully understand what is in the contract and what is not, and to make sure that we have everything taken care of.
Ms. Pally had a question?
So, did you do like a scoring system for all the different bids?
Yes.
So
yes.
what, your number 2, what was their offer? What was it? So for the first year is 5.5 million, right?
Number 2 was almost 6.5.
6.5. And then the increase was about the same, 4%?
Well, since they were a new company, since it's 6.5%, it would have been over 8.2% over what we're currently paying.
No, they're,
Oh, their year, I don't have that information in front of me.
okay.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood you.
Oh, that's okay.
Can I just want to add that, one of the biggest reasons that ABM was, that we wanted to, that they scored high was, they were the only company that put in a proposal that is offering us the management structure that we feel is necessary. The others were manager, we have a daytime manager, a nighttime manager, two nighttime managers, and leads in the building. And the others were ranged from manager as needed to day manager was pretty much, I think, the next best offer.
Yeah, one was part-time, one was as needed. There were a couple that just weren't exactly clear on their management, what they were doing, so.
And there was one other point that came up during the prep session. I think Ms. Horner asked a good question that had to do with the cost of transition. That's a factor too, right? And if we were to choose another vendor for our custodial services, there would be considerable cost in making that transition, right?
Yeah, there would also be, just things like equipment transitions, toilet paper towel dispensers. Because, one company uses XYZ supply and the other company uses ABC supply, and their dispensers are different. So there's different transition issues that happen as well. If we were down neck and neck to 2 companies, would that make an impact? Yes, but with the difference between the 2 companies, I don't know that, ABM didn't get bonus points for that.
Okay.
What I'm trying to say.
Got it.
So what was the lowest bid?
So what I'm going to say is take this with a grain of salt, because they didn't hit every point that we required them to do. It was 4.9%. I'm sorry, 4.9 million. But they didn't have the staffing levels that were required. Their supervision was not clear, so there was some issues, and their scoring showed that.
And in the budget that Tony recently presented, is this budgeted? Is this
I
5.5?
believe it's the budget's a little higher than
Yes.
this.
So we, when I was putting together the budget for facilities, I think we increased it 12 to 15%. We felt that it was gonna be a significant increase, and we got about 8.2%, so we do have a little bit of, very little bit of cost savings that we can pass along with the budget.
Thank you.
So, I assume that ABM is similar to like Durham, right? Like the people who are actually doing the custodial work are gonna be the same regardless of who we choose, and it's just the management structure that would change, is that correct?
I mean, we could say that, hey, we don't like your employees, you gotta hire all new employees, but I wouldn't do that. But, so yes.
Okay. So my question is, as we renew this, we've talked about how ABM has worked for us as a district. Has anybody checked with the employees who are maybe face-to-face with our kids, our students, our teachers, and how do they like ABM?
I haven't done a district-wide survey, but the employee that works in this building, she's very happy. Unfortunately, she's gonna be retiring in August, but when they.
She's sweet.
She is. Amazing person. Anyway, when they transitioned from non-union to union, that increased their benefits significantly. So, them being union employees, ABM, certain fringe benefits helps them, but I think the union, them being part of the union is what really helps them as well, because then there's clear disciplinary measures and steps. They know what their health benefits are, that's all through the union. Their sick time, their vacation time, that's all dictated by the union, so. She's happy, I haven't done a district-wide survey.
I wonder if they do any kind of internal, satisfaction. Before we renew something like this, I'd like to make sure that it's working for the people who work with our kids.
Do you mean the teachers and principals as well?
No, I
Are they happy
don't.
with the service?
It sounds like they are, because, I think that question was asked. My question is the custodians themselves.
That would also bring up that at a superintendent meeting when this first came out, I did ask the principals and coordinators for feedback on their feelings on the current service that we're doing, because that's the one advantage we have with the incumbent. I did not, I don't believe Jess received any negative or positive feedback, so.
The only feedback I've received was from Star, and that we needed a full-time person at Star to support that program.
And of course, the other indicator would be turnover. If schools are able.
We asked that.
Okay, good.
So they did have a higher turnover rate year one of their previous contract. So it kind of skewed their overall turnover rate. And when you transition from one company to another, you expect it to be pretty high. But I believe last year was right around 80% grouping.
Retention.
Yeah, yes.
Good.
So their turnover rate was pretty similar to the other companies. You think retention rate, you think only an 80% is probably not that great, but I think it became very clear that for custodial companies, right around 80, 85, 86% was the standard.
Anybody else? Yes.
Jess, we did this a couple years ago, evaluate custodial companies. Were any of the companies that were invited in that time asked to participate this time?
I don't know who was asked because I wasn't here at that point.
I know.
But we do keep a running list with purchasing of anybody that has previously submitted, anybody that has reached out in the past years to say, hey, we offer custodial services. So I don't know how many off the top of my head, but actually reached out to many companies. And there were a couple companies that got back to me and said, hey, we're just not big enough to do the work. we're not interested. So I think her amount of outreach was absolutely sufficient.
Okay. Could we be provided, could the board be provided with that criteria evaluation with the different year to years, just for our review?
Say that one more time.
Could the board be provided with a copy of that criteria of review for our review?
Yes.
Wonderful. And I imagine a large part of the cost, or well, let me just phrase it as a question. What percentage of their number aligns with their cleaning supplies?
I did not ask that question.
Okay. So their proposal response didn't include that?
Because their proposal does include all supplies,
Huh?
whether it be, the chemicals they use to clean or toilet paper, paper towels, that was all inclusive in their number.
But they didn't break that out
We did not ask them to break that out.
and indicate what they're using and how
They
much
did-
they're assuming?
They did indicate the products that they were using. We asked them to provide that information.
Okay.
But on the bid sheet, proposal sheet, we did not ask them to break out. We wanted a lump sum.
Okay. Where are these chemicals stored in all of the different buildings? And when that area runs low, where do they get their backup supply from? Is there a large regional area somewhere in the district that houses these?
Yes.
And are all of these storage locations interior conditioned spaces, or are they subject to temperature swings?
Great question. They are all internal in our buildings. They're all in the custodial closets or in closets like back of house closets where kids and teachers don't have access to. They're locked. And the central location is, they have a building over at Twining Ford. They have 2 offices. They have an admin that's there, and Robinson has an office there. And they have like a back warehouse area that they store chemicals. They're all safely stored. We have MSDS or SDS sheets for all of them, so that if there is a spill, how do we react to it? They also have systems at schools where the mix is automatic. There's like a thing, and I'm not a custodian, so I don't know what it's called, but there's a device that's hooked up to the water, and you basically hit a button, and it dispenses the correct amount so that the mixture can't be messed up.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Can I go again?
Please.
Sorry. This is a lot of money, so I have some
You're
questions.
absolutely right.
So you said that the difference between ABM at basically 5.5 million and the lowest bidder was 4.9, so basically $500,000. So one would say that you could hire quite a few supervisors for that differential.
So it wasn't just supervisors. There were plenty of issues with the proposal. So there was a question about supplying paper products, whether that was in their price or not. There was questions about the number of staffing that they were providing. So that's why I said use caution when I say this number. It's not apples to apples. It's basically apples to acorns. So it's not even in the same family of, because, I mean, there would be a lot of, a lot of issues that we were gonna have to work through.
Fair enough.
Very good point, though.
I'll ask you go again too. Are there any stipulations in the contract if they don't meet any of the metrics that they say they're going to provide us?
So as always, we have a 30-day out. But other stipulations, I mean, there's plenty of meeting requirements that we have. We have, every 2 months, we have a district-wide, I forget what we call it, but it's a meeting to discuss, where they're at in the process and, give us updates on staffing. So we have plenty of meetings. We're also implementing, hopefully once every 2 weeks, we're gonna be able to walk a school, Robinson and I. That's depending on how our scheduling is. But what do you mean by?
For example, with the previous contract, if I remember correctly, I'm just gonna throw out a number. They guaranteed 72 employees working on our buildings. And if they didn't hit that number, they paid a price for it.
But, I mean, if they.
That's what I mean, I'm talking about them either owing us money or not getting money if they don't meet the like, for example, you know, what if somebody doesn't show up, I don't wanna say here, because she's lovely, at one of our sites for a whole night, or for 3 nights, or whatever, is there anything in there that says, if you don't, if there's not 69 employees working every single night, this is what happens the first time it happens, this is what happens the second time it happens, and then it starts hitting their pocketbook.
So what happens when someone calls out sick or has a vacation is that they'll take the daytime people and pay overtime to them, no cost to us, to cover that shift, to make sure that we have coverage. If someone quits and they don't replace the person within, you know, a week or 2, then we would be asking for money back. Most of the time, they're covering those shifts with other employees. You know, like we have, like, I think we have 2 or 3 people during the day at the high school, say North, they'll pull someone from North to cover the night shift at Sulphine-Stone. There's no additional cost to us. Is there a shift or 2 that, you know, throughout the month, throughout the year that doesn't get covered? Absolutely. But we make sure that we're monitoring to make sure that there's proper coverage, and as soon as someone quits or they have to terminate an employee, I'm notified, so that we can also, you know, they all have fobs. We know who has the fobs and we can deactivate the fobs. So we definitely make sure that we have the proper amount of employees. And like I said, if we had extended time, we would definitely say, hey, you know, your hourly rate is $10 an hour. You haven't been there for 8 hours, 4 times 50 days. You owe us this amount of money.
Okay.
So Jess, we can and have back charged them.
Yeah, absolutely, we have. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Good, good discussion. I mean, it really matters in the quality of life in schools, the custodial services.
Well, and when you're spending almost $5.5 million, you want to make sure that you have all the answers you need.
Yeah, thank you. Anybody else? It'll be on next month's agenda.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Ms. Bennett.
Okay, upcoming agenda items, again, we're continuing with the district-wide facility study, the district-wide HVAC filters, wood gym floor refinishing bid, emergency generator inspection and maintenance bid, certified laboratory services, and grease trap and septic tank pumping and disposal services bid. Okay, we are going to move into the master planning study with Schrader Group and CHA. First item on the agenda for this is Chancellor Center costs, and then we're going to discuss the warm, safe, and dry. So at the last meeting, we were asked to investigate some of the additional costs for Chancellor Center, whether we renovate or move, or, you know, whatever the option may be. So the first item is Richboro Middle School transition for temporary Chancellor Center. And I don't have that. We're gonna have to come back to that because I don't have that in front of me. Basically, the additional cost would be the cost of the temporary chiller. And I don't have that cost in front of me. Other costs, I'm sorry? Train. Some other costs would be temporary, like making some of the classrooms into office space. So it could be some shelving, it could be some mounting of, you know, bookshelves, that kind of stuff, which would be a minimal cost to our maintenance department. And I'll let Tony look that up, and come back to that one. Next one is the Chancellor Center moving costs. I was able to walk a moving company through this week to get an estimated cost if we would move Chancellor Center to Richboro Middle School. So he provided me with 2 costs. One is we did the packing and they moved. The other cost is if they did the packing and the moving. So the first cost is about $43,100. Again, just keep in mind that this cost is right now, current conditions. If we decide to move 20 more people in with all their stuff, the cost is going to change. If we decide to move 20 people out with all of their stuff, the cost will change. If we decide to do it over winter break, the cost might change due to increased labor costs because it might be holiday pay. So just keep that in mind. If we decide to move forward with Chancellor Center in whatever way, we'd obviously walk through multiple companies and get pricing to really relocate. So again, $43,100. If they were going to pack, it would be an additional almost $14,000, $13,680. So that would be four packers for 4 days to pack the entire building.
So we would be paying.
Thought we would get two options just in case. The move would take 4 days plus a 1 day of setup over at Richboro Middle. So we would be down for approximately a week and figure out alternative works areas.
The installation, for a temporary chiller at Richboro Middle, the installation and removal cost is $25,142. That's a one-time fee. And then the last time that we had one there, it was rented at a cost of $15,560 per month. 15,560
Thank you.
Rental.
Per month?
Say the cent,
per month.
what did you say the setup was?
25,142
On both ends, so it's 50 total?
round trip. Yes, it's round trip freight and
Yeah,
in installation decommission startup is 17,000 and inspection was 1,200. So yes, that was all one fee for putting it in, bringing it here, putting it in, hooking it up to our building, and then when we were done removing it.
Oh, so it's all included in the 25,000, the
Yes.
removal as well?
Yes.
Okay, so it's not 50, it's 25.
Yes.
okay,
Okay.
thank you.
And that's the chiller that was sized for this is actually Richboro Middle School's chiller from.
Yes, it's the same one that we
Yep.
rented. It's the bill from the last time we rented.
Now, obviously, there would be an increase because this was a year ago.
Just point of clarification. Did you say that this is the same cost from the same or a different cost from the same company with the same chiller that the district used earlier for Richboro Middle?
This is not an updated cost. This is the cost that we paid when Richboro Elementary School was in Richboro Middle.
The 15 number?
Per month, yes.
Yes.
15.
Okay. But so we're getting the same equipment back from the same company?
We would get the same equipment. I mean,
Well, we would go to
We
the
would-
three companies
We'd rebid.
and get pricing for it, but this is an estimated cost of what it would be per month.
We haven't done that yet, because we're trying to give you a
No, I
ballpark of where we were last time.
I get that, but I'm trying to understand, is this from the same company that's providing the estimate that previously provided us that chiller? Or is this a totally different company?
This is just the company that we used the last time. We have not gone to anybody yet for an estimate. We would go to three companies, one of which would be this company. So,
Okay.
but if we got better prices from another company, then we would.
So this 25K all-inclusive number, is that something that we developed, or is that something that came from a company?
This came from Train, so this is the exact cost that we paid back a year ago when we hooked it up at Richboro Middle.
Okay, thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
I know that we go out to bid, I'm just trying to understand where these numbers came from.
These numbers are coming from what we've already paid.
Okay.
Old numbers. Good.
Okay, and then potential lease costs, you wanna talk about that, Tony?
Sure. So we talked to a realtor, who brought us prices. I've talked about this before. They brought us prices for renting 3 properties. The first property is a 30,000 square foot property. 2 floors at $28.50 per square foot, plus electric, internet, and janitorial. That would be $855,000 per year, or $71,250 a month. Wait, I'm sorry, $855,000 a year. And there is a $71,250 monthly option to have another 10,000 square foot auditorium. There's another property, 26,000 square feet, 2 floors, $24.50 per square foot, plus electric, internet, and janitorial. That comes to $637,000 per year, or $53,083.33 monthly. This property is also for sale at $5.2 million and can be expanded up to another 36,000 square foot. And a third property for 29,000 square feet on 1 floor, $22 a square foot, plus electric and internet and janitorial, $638,000 a year, $53,166.66 monthly. Some of us went out this past Friday to visit 2 of these properties, as we were instructed by the board at last month's meeting. We looked at the buildings and they were offices. They were nice buildings.
Could you, I missed 2 numbers, please, if you would, Mr. Rapp. The square footage on the third building
29,000,
and the sale price on the second building.
$5.2 million.
Thank you.
How much was the total cost for the third building?
The what?
The third building?
Third building was $638,000 per year, $22 a square foot, $53,166.66 monthly. Whether or not the buildings could meet our needs, I would imagine they could, or, but one of the buildings would require some significant fit out and revitalization.
What's the square footage of the building?
35,000.
With these
What's that?
Mr. Hickey asked what the square footage of this building was, which is 35,000 square feet. This building that we're in.
Does that include the basement?
Yes.
And was there discussion about minimum time period for a lease?
We didn't specifically talk about that. We were told both that they are looking to lease, and that they're flexible was how it was phrased. I would imagine that it would be a year minimum, but
Sure.
if we're looking for space for while this building's being worked on, that would be about the amount of time we would need anyway, so.
Yeah. Thank you.
Were they all in Newtown?
Yes. Newtown Township.
Ms. Khan?
Which option would require, you said, significant changes?
The first building,
First, most expensive one.
yes.
And the biggest.
Did you say the second one could also be leased, or was only for sale?
No, it could be leased 26,000 square feet, $24.50 per square foot, $637,000 per year, $53,083.33 monthly.
Is this, Mr. Roosevelt?
Thank you. This is some other topic here. What sort of size is a parking lot for these 3 buildings? But you can skip the first one, I guess.
I don't know, we did not visit the third property. But the first two properties did have expansive parking.
More or less than Chancellor?
More.
Okay. And the second one, did you say that there's an option to have an additional 36K square feet added?
An
Or did you
additional-
say it would bring it up to 36K?
No, there's property, it comes with there's a few acres of property, so on that property, there's, I don't know what the word is, not plans, but it's been approved to build up to a 36,000 square foot building,
An additional one?
an additional one.
Okay, so it would be 26 plus 36 theoretically, or up to 36.
36.
Thank you.
Plus 36.
What's that?
Did you say plus 36 or up?
Plus 36.
Plus- okay.
Well, it's up, you can build another building up to 36,000
Right.
square feet.
Ms. Polly?
Okay,
you-
so the price per square foot, does this include the fittings, that whatever the changes we want to make to the building, or it's just like,
So they told us that could be negotiated. We asked that question at each building
okay,
for build outs. I mean, the first building that Tony and Jess were talking about, you know, there was obvious cosmetic things that would need to be repaired. Wallpaper was coming off the wall and that kind of thing, and we talked about the build out and who would assume that cost. And for the buildings that we saw, we were told that they would be flexible and would have to be negotiated.
I'm a real supporter of transparency and I think we're in the practice of operating with transparency, but I want to ask, isn't it the case that real estate discussions can be handled in executive session?
Yes.
Yeah, I guess I'm raising that as a point that when we get down to brass tacks, and we're not there yet, but when we get down to brass tacks, I think we probably want to do this in executive session, since we're sort of talking about costs and negotiation.
I do believe, and I could be, I'm not a lawyer, but I believe that it is related to purchase of sale.
Oh, not leasing.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good question to ask. Thank you.
Just think about how I've heard it.
Yeah, no, that's good to know.
one more question.
Yeah, please.
So if we decide to lease, then the cost of moving Chancellor Center there would be about the same as the one you gave us?
But if we decided to move to Chester County, that the cost would increase because of the time and distance, but it's relatively the same, so it would be similar.
Ms. Stone.
Yeah, there are a lot of changes that need to be made at Richboro Middle School.
I think that would require further discussion, because we would have to look at wants and needs for office locations. How do we lay out the business office? Do we just put people in classrooms? Do we put walls up? You know, there's definitely a lot more further conversation that need to happen. But in general, yes, we could move to Richboro Middle School within a month. I mean, it's heated right now. We obviously don't have a chiller. So come next month, it probably will get very hot in there. But it's warm, safe, and dry.
Mr. Rapp.
Painting, I would think.
It would depend, really. I mean, if we're only gonna be there for a year, and I mean, I think other people in the building might have other opinions, but we could definitely move in. I would not recommend spending a ton of money for a building that we potentially could demo after we use it one last time. We keep saying that one last time.
One
but-
last time.
Yeah.
Well, does it has the ability to set up meeting space and all that?
Yeah, the library is a great meeting space. In fact, we utilize the library for different meetings still. It's gonna dwindle because of lack of air conditioning. But yeah, there's plenty of classrooms that we can turn into a room like this with a big conference table. There's the library, yeah, the gym. I wouldn't set the gym up because we do still rent out the gym to users. But there's the cafeteria, there's,
The gym is still being used?
yes, yeah, oh, yeah, the auditorium.
Mr. Rath?
I'm not a lawyer, but I did look it up on the internet. In the state law specifically says to consider the purchase or lease of real property up to the time that an option to purchase or lease is, it has been.
Oh, thank you for that. Thank
I was
you.
wrong, it does include a lease.
Well, you're not a lawyer. You're a finance guy.
I'm an internet lawyer.
An internet lawyer, there you go.
That's more
And
dangerous.
Bob, please.
I'll ask, do we really need that big of a space? Whether it be leasing or buying or whatever. For example, we have facilities here in our district that could accommodate some of the people that are in this in this building. We don't need, in my opinion, we don't need that space next door. There's ample places throughout the district to hold our monthly meetings and/or training sessions for various employees. Like I said, is it possible that the various departments work at different facilities and then what's really essential may not be 30,000 square feet, maybe it's only 20,000 square feet, or I'm not sure what that number is, but then you'll be looking at A, decreased cost, or B, other options, as far as our administrative buildings.
We've talked about that, and we certainly discussed if we were to move out of this building in whatever capacity, our board meetings, we would run at one of the secondary schools. They're the largest auditoriums. We don't have auditoriums in the elementary schools, or the same thing is true with the cafeterias. I would say that if we were, when you're talking about putting different departments in different locations, we'd have to pay close attention to that because of the inner working among departments. So if that were the case, we would want certainly to have business in the HR department in the same location, and just by example. So I can't tell you that we've gone down to the granular level, talking about where every department and every person would go. There are some one-offs. For example, we have 6 tech, Matt, what's your title?
Knowledge integration specialist.
We have 6 of Matt's across the district. Some are placed in buildings across the district, 2 are in this building. So we think we could easily relocate those folks to a school. So there is some.
I mean, and my concern is, the pictures and everything else I've seen, is the people who are in the basement. Is there a way to move our facilities and our transportation departments possibly over to Twiningford or something like that, as I get chuckles and snickers,
So the
but
reason why we chuckle is because every opportunity I get, I joke with Tony and Andy, asking if me and Christine can move to Twiningford. And they keep saying, no. That's why we laugh, because it's an ongoing joke.
it's an ongoing no. I mean, like I said, I get concerned for the people who work in that building. And, which kind of goes to one of my points that I've raised before, where does this building actually work for its intended purposes? And I'll just leave that hang for now.
Yeah, okay, thanks. So we've covered the lease costs. Any questions about lease costs?
One quick question about lease. Are all 3 of these move-in ready, or do all 3 of them require modification?
I don't know about number 3. I would say 2 would be pretty close and number 1 would not.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Stone?
Is there a reason to, if we were not going to lease and we were going to use a property that we already have Was there a reason why Richboro Middle School would not work?
Richboro Middle School requires a tremendous amount of work to continue to use that. If we're gonna use it for a part-time, we can Band-Aid it, but the boilers and the systems in general there are 60-plus years old. The roof is 60-plus years old, so it's not ADA compliant. There's modifications, and Doug, you can talk, I don't remember off the top of my head what the cost is, but there's significant, for Richboro Middle, there's significant modifications that need to be made to continue to use that in a non-temporary basis.
What does temporary mean? I mean, I said 1 year.
So
Initially looking at.
Could we use it for 1 year and on a hope and a prayer? Yes. Those boilers are over 60 years old. If they stop working, then I'm gonna come to you guys and say, I need a temporary boiler.
$30 million.
We have put patches on the roof
It's like 30 million.
many times,
Listen.
so, you know, are we close to catastrophic failure on the roof? No. But we have, all of the air handlers there are 60 years old.
No, that's the total
So-
study.
There is a risk of using it one more time. I think Doug, when he was in my position, bless you, I think he probably said the same thing, that there is a risk of using it one more time for Richboro Elementary. Do I love the use of Richboro Middle School? Yes, because it gave us the opportunity to renovate Richboro Elementary School all at one time. You know, if we were to renovate this building, using that would give us the opportunity to move everybody out of the building and just take over the building and renovate it. Great opportunity, but there is a risk to doing that.
Just a second.
Richboro Middle is 88,000 square feet. This building is 35,000 square feet. When we used it for an elementary school, we used all 88,000 square feet. My question is, do we still need as big a chiller as we had when we were using it all 88,000 square feet? Or is there potentially some savings because we could cordon off just a portion?
So the way the building is currently set up, you cannot just valve off sections of the building. So yes, we would have to cool and heat the entire building.
Just another anecdote there. When we had the elementary schools in there, we didn't use all of the full building. Like, we locked down the locker rooms, the boys and girls locker room, the places that used to be the old shops, they were off limits so a good section of, not a good section, several sections of the arts wing were not used when we had elementary students in there.
I'm sure the building is code compliant and has all the safety measures and so forth,
Yeah.
but, okay, my one other question would be, the bandwidth and the wiring in that building. It's move-in ready for people who need adequate internet access?
Yes, because IT hasn't removed any of their equipment. I believe they've shut off Wi-Fi in the building.
Sure.
But there's still, they can flip a switch and it works again.
We have asked, I'm sorry, Ms. Stone.
Go ahead.
But we have asked them to keep that operational. One, we need to keep it operational for cameras and alarms. And two, as Jess said, we've been using it throughout the year for a host of things, from interviews to meetings,
Great,
particularly in the library.
great.
But if I could but you might be asking though, if you put like several people in one classroom temporarily, you might need some extra data drops or something, right?
Yeah, but that's something that we can always.
Yeah, you can pull,
In-house, yeah.
but you might have to add some data
Yes.
drops and things.
So if we were to go into Richboro, do you have an estimate of what things are critical that might become problems if we were in there short term? I mean,
Honestly, it could be any part of the infrastructure of that building. It's served its purpose. It's really, 1960s, there's been little done with the infrastructure because we moved Richboro out and we said, okay, great, we're good now. But then, the district has saved millions and millions of dollars by using it as a temporary school, right, for sure. Because we haven't had the need for phasing. We have projects that went 1 year, not 2 years, on all these projects without modulars. So it's been a fantastic
Yeah.
building, but the chiller went, the electrical service there is, I think it's Federal, is that Federal Pacific, that FP?
Probably. I don't know if that, but I would,
Yeah, I think so, it's hard to say. It's like I can get in a 1971 Pacer and try to go to California, but I'm not really sure what state it might fail in. It's kind of, it's hard to predict. I think the district's done a great job taking care of it, so there's a chance that it, does well. But there could be some components that become challenged.
I guess I asked because when you started the conversation, you said Richboro Middle School was warm, safe, and dry. So I was thinking.
right now, on April
on it.
3rd, at 6:08 PM, it is. We do have a building mechanic that walks through every day to make sure there's no roof leaks or piping leaks or any major issues that might come up. But like Doug was saying, with anything that's that old, I mean, if we had a crystal ball, we wouldn't be sitting here, we'd be billionaires. But there is always a possibility that something could go wrong in that building because of the age of it.
Good, yes, go, Ms. Khan.
So let's say hypothetically, you guys move out of Chancellor and you go to Richboro, to move to Richboro Middle School temporarily while, let's say, Chancellor is being renovated. Is that a recommendation you, Ms. Bindo, or administration would recommend versus leasing an other space? Like you're comfortable saying, okay, we can move over to Richboro Middle, we feel comfortable with that while Chancellor's being renovated. We're talking about these scenarios, but would that be a recommendation you all would make and be okay with?
I would say it's an option. I mean, I don't think we're saying whether it be recommended or not,
But either would mean that you could all be together. You wouldn't have to break up. And even if you were at Richboro, if something went wrong, the cost is, $700,000 less than leasing for the year.
For me?
So if something went wrong during the year,
Yeah.
weigh that. But I guess what you're asking is.
Yeah, my question was.
Are you comfortable with one option over another? Where's your comfort level?
So my comfort level is that we're a student-first organization. We need to take care of the kids, and we will make whatever that we have to work for the adults. So if that's going and leasing, if that's moving to Richboro, if that requires us to work for that week when we decide that we're going to move somewhere else, we'll make it work. So I want to make sure this comes off properly, but I don't feel so badly inconveniencing adults like I would inconveniencing kids. So we will make any scenario work for the adults that are in this building.
Thank you, Dr. Sanko. Ms. Polly has a question.
Yeah, so putting students first always means that you also have the adults that will take care of the kids. So we need a place for the administration to function. And looking from all the options we have right now, I think it comes down to either leasing space or renovating Chancellor. And while renovating Chancellor, moved to Greensboro Middle School for like a year. Because all the other options are very expensive. They require new construction, which is much more expensive. So I see there's a different number here for like Chancellor Center and what we discussed before. Is it possible to understand why the difference, and maybe this is like an updated estimate?
It's not updated, this is, so we'll get into this sheet and Doug's gonna explain, because this sheet came from the book you guys get to highlight the warm, safe, and dry. So Doug will explain what this is if we're ready to move on to that.
Good, I was just gonna say,
Yeah.
we were at,
So I keep hearing the warm, safe, and dry. Could you give me a definition of what that means?
Yep.
let me make sure, we're done with lease costs, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on with the presentation and we'll get an explanation.
Yep, so, perfect segue.
Warm, safe, and dry.
Thank you. Warm, safe, and dry. Okay, the sheet that you see presented and then also handed out at the meeting, I don't know if there's any extras floating around for any community members that would like to see one. I think they're no.
You guys want them? I can go make copies.
There's a couple, there were a couple extras.
I'm gonna make it.
So I'm going to hand it over to Doug to further explain the district evaluation options. And then I also have a slide that highlights the warm, safe, and dry columns. So Doug, handing it over to you if you want to begin.
Sure. So to further explain warm, safe, and dry, so as you know, in the summary pages that we gave you, it's in Dave's report as well as our capital plan. We have a column that says, hey, here's the cost if we go in and we address all the deficiencies that are in each building, right, based on our findings. But then there is another column, which is the orange column, which is basically essential items that would need to be addressed. So there's always the question of, yeah, it's 50 million, but what do we really have to do, right? So we said, all right, let's create this essential column so that we can start to answer that question a little bit better. So what the essentials column does is, and I have all the items that we identify based on the abbreviations of the items that we review in the building. We've identified in red, and I can get this to you, what items fall under essential items that need to be addressed. So we then look at those items only, and that's how we come up with the value of that. And that, I can give you an explanation. So what would be included in that would be boiler replacement, caulking for water infiltration issues, concrete work if there's any tripping hazards or stairs or things, ceiling tile if any of those are wet or problematic, right? So we're just talking warm, safe, and dry.
Are those, is that list that you're reading off to us specific to buildings, or this is?
Yeah, this is
general?
specific to, this is the list we use for every building that we identified to create the essentials column.
Could we get a copy of that while you're going through it?
I can get you a copy, I will get you a copy unless you want to, somebody wants to make a copy.
Yeah, why not?
I won't be able to read it to you. It's being copied. No, I just brought this along. This,
Okay, we'll pause for a couple seconds.
we'll talk about other things.
Or do you want to keep talking about it and then or we can wait for,
Talk about baseball if you want.
no, we're not talking about baseball.
All right.
And how are the Phillies doing?
They're good.
How'd they do yesterday?
Just as a Braves fan, let's put it out there.
Oh, that's.
The Braves are still looking for their first win of the year.
And
I have hope. I have hope.
So it's very early. So we can talk about the warm, safe, and dry, but I can tell you here at Chancellor, so when you look at the warm, safe, and dry, you can see the cost difference between those two items. And I think there's other questions that we can get into also with Chancellor relative to what those essential items are, what are the capital improvement items, what are the renovation items, and what are the total reno in site. And we'll have to go through that list and summarize it so that you guys are clear on the differences between all of those options.
So are you saying?
wait, Linda, Linda.
I just don't understand what,
Well,
if
let
he's
him
gonna
go.
go through the list.
Yeah,
No, go.
I
yeah,
just wanna ask what he's explaining.
No, please. Let's
Okay.
hold question, please. Go ahead.
Okay, so just to explain, right? So we'll talk about how we got to the essential warm, safe, and dry number, but we know that number is about 6.5 million. And that's only going to address the items that are an abbreviated list of what's already listed in the capital plan as items to be addressed at Chancellor Center. It doesn't address everything in the list. The total capital improvements that are in the book, that's everything in the book, at about 7.7 million, will address the items that are in the book, but it will not, when you walk back into Chancellor Center, when those projects are finished, it's going to still feel a lot like it feels today. We're going to have new HVAC systems, in the closets, above ceilings. We're going to fix some of the problematic floor areas. You're not going to be painting the building. You're not going to be replacing all, doors and hardware and touching every space. You're just going to touch those specific items identified in the book. No programmatic improvements, just those items. So then the total renovation number of about 11.4 addresses all of the issues within the building, minor programming issues, painting all the spaces, addressing the plaster repairs, doing everything. So when you come in the building, you're going to say, wow, the building's been refreshed inside. The one thing we know, though, when we talked about renovating the building, because that's a number we carry in the book to compare building to building, what the square foot cost renovations are, it didn't include all of the site issues. So we gave you then the document that looked like this, like you should have this, that we said, okay, here's the 11.4 million, and then here are the other items that we would want to address to fully renovate the building to a point where it feels renovated and we're not getting water infiltration and it is brought up to today's standards, with exception to the regular maintenance you're going to have with this building or any building, right?
Doug, remind everybody what that cost is.
So that cost is the other cost of the summary. It's about 15.6 million. So we range 6.5, 7.7, 11.4, and 15.6. Thank you. So when I look at this, it just
What? It's your copy. I kept it separate.
So when we look at this, I think what's important to understand is the two realistic options here, I think, are either the total capital improvement list, which then includes addressing the water infiltration, making the building dry inside, and taking care of, the other items we've identified, or the total renovation in site, which gets you the renovations that you may want, if you consider this option, and addresses the water infiltration and those site issues. If you go just total renovations, you're not going to fix your water infiltration and the other items that we identified. So you really, I think realistically, are looking at the total capital improvement items from the book at 7.7. It doesn't address any programming. It doesn't address all the spaces in the building, or a total renovation, which includes addressing the water infiltration and touches all the spaces and the site work. And I think that's the best I can try to summarize it. Does that help?
Can I just clarify, you're saying either we would do the 7.6 or we would do the sum of 7.6 plus 11.4? Am I
It's
understanding?
not quite the sum.
No, it's this. It would be the 11.4 plus the site, which was this sheet that I prepared. It's some of the items from the capital plan plus the total renovation number.
Okay.
I'm not suggesting you do any of these. I'm just saying, if you were to consider something here, the only options that address the infiltration around the basement are either the essentials number, the total capital improvements number, so the 6.5 or the 7.7, or the 15.6.
Can I ask, is there anything not included in the 15.6 million figure?
So that's where, these are order of magnitude numbers.
I recall, yeah.
So what isn't included, we would want to know, if you said, hey, we're really interested in doing the total reno site package, David and I would want to sit with Tony and Andy and the administrative team here at Chancellor, that you would define as the team to talk about programming. And when I say programming, I mean, hey, we have 5 HR folks that need to be in this space. We want to put our tax collector here. We want to make sure that we have, everybody, in position where they want to be. This space isn't quite big enough. Is it possible to take this wall down and expand this space? We want to understand those things. Then we can take the order of magnitude number and start to break it down into truly itemized square foot numbers based on a more defined scope. We would know there's some structure. If you said, hey, we want to make historic classroom 1 and 2 connected, well, this is a pretty significant wall. We'd have to see structurally what we would have to do to tear this wall out. That's certainly not in the renovate the building, because that's a structural change that's above and beyond what you would anticipate. So we'd understand those things, then we could update the number based on the programming discussions. But it would generally cover minor, partitions that aren't structural, in nature, minor modifications and programmatic changes. None of the other options have any programming changes in them at all, only the 15.6.
Thank you. So I'm going to go back, because I was thinking, coming in here, what are we going to do? And I'm going back to 2023, when this building, remember the big discussions about the trench around and the drainage. And then we basically came to, let's get a full capital, like a scope of the capital plan of all the different structures and plans that we need to do and see how everything kind of fits together, and that's where we're at. And so there's a lot of community that are interested in this building, and there's still a lot of open questions about who's going to be funding certain possibilities for funding and the long-term plan for the building. So when I talk about where we are now, I think I'm going back to the trenches, the drainage. When you see what's going on with this, regardless of who ends up with this building, it's a treasure to the community. And we held off because we were trying to figure out what's the long-term plan for the district of all of our facilities. And now we're really, we're at the point where we're addressing it. So understanding that $7 million is the warm, safe, dry option, it adds more into there that maybe we could do phases. And so I know the very first thing that I would want to address with this building, regardless of what we do with it, we owe it to the past and the future that we address the foundation. So dig it up, get the drainage going in there. That building's going to be a lot safer. And once we know that there's no water coming in, we can completely make the downstairs more habitable than it is, improve that. And that's what I thought as the first phase to be able to do it. And so I wanted to ask to you guys, I was just quickly talking to Mr. Rapp when we were making copies, and he said that at that point, we would want to bring in some other, some of these other projects that are a little more expensive. But I'm saying, if we had already done that before, then what I'm saying is, I'm all for fixing the drainage, getting this building going. We could probably, and my questions would be, could we still stay in this building while we do that? Maybe not in the basement, might not be as much, but are you saying that because I thought that that was a summer project before.
So let me answer that question. It's a loaded question. You mentioned phases. The one thing I'd be cautious about is once you start doing some of the work here, you're probably going to have to empty the building to do the work, and I'd be cautious about then you're going to have to try to empty this building more than once to do larger projects. This project is also, so we have that domino effect when we talk about projects. The areaways that are problematic are going to be removed because you're going to excavate, an angle of repose, or at least, a straight line where they're going to put temporary shoring in as they go around these foundations. But I suspect they're going to want to expose all the foundation to get new drainage in to do what we have to do. So they're going to impact the parking lot, certainly. So you're going to impact the ability to even access the site, especially in this whole upper U shape of the building. So I don't think you're really going to be able to function out of this building. The other pieces and the domino effect is all of the condensing units that you see outside from the HVAC system are going to have to be removed to do the work. We need a new HVAC system in the building. Mm-hmm. So if you're going to take half of those components out to do the work of the foundation, you really should consider replacing the HVAC at that time, because it wouldn't make sense to touch the old units, pile them somewhere, and then put them back in, since you're doing part of the work at that time.
Question. If we were proposed to do this work in 2023, did that plan didn't include emptying the building?
We didn't, I don't know that we ever proposed.
That we were going to do the drainage.
I don't recall that we had it listed as a summer project. Maybe we did.
It wasn't?
Joe, I could be wrong. We've been going through so many discussions right now.
Yeah, I don't think,
I'd have to go back and look, because I don't want to say.
We looked at it and we pushed it out.
I know.
You're right, and my recollection is when it never got to the proposal stage, because, as you say, Joe, we pushed it out.
But in those conversations, there was no mention that we would have to find another place for the administration during the remediation.
I've been fairly consistent about saying anything we do in this building, it's probably gonna have to be empty because of the impact to the occupants. And I think that triggers the HVAC, and those two projects definitely wanna be teamed together if you can. The other project that is part of that, it all kind of dominoes, is the stairs out here accessing are a concrete cap to a space, the mechanical space below. And that slab is deteriorating to the point where we need to get above and we have to fix it from underneath. We put temporary posts in and shoring, feeling like we were gonna do that when we did the HVAC project. So we were definitely planning on the HVAC project, and we're probably talking about the outside, but all part of emptying the building, because the HVAC absolutely requires the building to be emptied. It's gonna be a mess and uncomfortable.
How many months would that project be anticipated, just for what we were talking about before?
I mean, you're probably 6 to 9 months,
Okay.
you know. So the reason we didn't do that slab is because all of the units and ductwork, there's a network of ductwork underneath that you can't access. So we said, all right, well, when we do that, then we'll fix that. So it's, you know, one thing requires something else, and it's kind of a chain of things we need to consider.
Right, and you would be gutting the bottom floor, the basement, basically, to get to
We'd
the
have to look
ductwork.
at, you know, for example, you know, in the boardroom, you have this V-shaped ductwork that runs down the middle of the room, right? The duct is above within that V. We have to determine, is that duct the right size? Do we have to do something different? Is that the way we're gonna continue to serve the room? So there's other things we have to assess as we start to design that project when we get to that actual
So
phase.
I'll just summarize that. I was going to just say that address the foundation and get the drainage cleared, and then you say, but that leads to everything else, so.
Yeah, I'm not discounting your thought, it's just that it requires, you know, consideration of those other projects since you're starting to touch it. Now we've taken part of the parking lot around the whole way, should we mill and overlay the whole lot since we've already taken this U shape out? Probably, right? They're gonna come in and have to repair half of the front, we probably should have them do the rest. So then, you know, should we look at the site lights when we're doing parking in case there's conduits that have to be replaced? Like, it just,
Big deal.
just dominoes.
Just one more question. I heard discussion, I don't know if it was public or not, but there's a land that's, the park, was that originally with the school? Was that anything included that we would possibly need that land in any of this development for whatever reason?
I'm not familiar with that
No.
discussion.
Okay.
All right, Ms. Stone has a question.
So I'm just clarifying that the water infiltration, the HVAC system, and then bringing back the parking the way it should be, are those items all in the essential upgrades at 6.5?
Yeah, they are, yeah.
So then what brings you to the 7.7?
So if you,
That,
I don't have, if you look in the book under Chancellor Center and you see all of the items identified, that's the 7.7.
okay,
So if you go to, it's gonna be tab 4 or 5. Maybe 4 or 5, I don't recall. It's gonna have by building, and if you look at Chancellor Center, you'll see a number, something like 7.7 million.
okay.
So that's if you did everything in the building listed on that page. That's not renovating the building.
That's not knocking down walls or
That's not
putting-
meeting with Andy and talking
Yeah,
about moving spaces and addressing
Correct.
program, right? That's just
That
addressing,
would get it back to where it is now.
Correct.
Essentially,
where it wants to be, yeah.
with the basement accessible and not the.
That would all be part, yeah, that would be addressed, yes.
Ms. Khan?
I'm just gonna add on to Ms. Jones. So what I heard was the water infiltration downstairs in the basement, HVAC. Ms. Stone had said the parking lot, but from what I heard from you, Mr. Taylor, was the stairs and slab are the three things that I heard. As,
I'm not all inclusive, I'm just kind of
Right.
thinking, I don't even have it in front of me, I'm just
So,
saying, those are things I absolutely know we have to do.
yes, so that's what I'm hearing, that's what I've heard historically. So of those three things, So I want to clarify which price point that is that? Is it the 6.5, 7.6?
There's not a number broken out for just those couple things.
Those three things, there isn't.
No, we broke out the.
Well, which one would include those three things then? The 7 point,
Six.
is it the 6.5 or 7.6?
The essentials would not cover the parking lot, right?
Okay, yes.
The 7.7 would include parking lot and some of those other things.
Okay. Okay.
Which you'd have to do, you can't just dig the hole.
Linda,
No, you're right. The 11.4 total reno doesn't include any of that. Doesn't include the exterior stuff.
Gotcha, okay.
Because that was just a number in the book comparing square footages of buildings. It wasn't intended to be an all-inclusive number. In the book, we don't put site costs in when we're comparing square footages because it would be impossible then to understand what the costs are to renovate these buildings, because the site requirements of each one of these buildings is totally different across the district. So we only list that in the book.
Keep in mind what Doug just said, because when we do transition to talk about this warm, safe, and just the warm, safe, and dry, that's why you cannot just take those numbers and build a project, because those numbers that are in the warm, safe, and dry do not include all the ancillary costs, like the parking lot, like restoring walls. So keep that in mind whenever we transition to talk about warm, safe, and dry, not just with Chancellor.
Yeah, this warm, safe, and dry numbers, this sheet, the warm, safe, and dry applies more strongly to buildings with students than than an office building, because there's other items on here that, we worry about, secure classrooms, we worry, from intrusion. I'm not saying we don't worry about that with adults, but this is built around student and staff safety throughout the schools. It does apply to Chancellor, and we use some of those numbers for Chancellor. Secure entry vestibule, we have a secure door, but we don't have a vestibule. If that's, as you sit and talk to administration, if the request was, hey, we really would like a person to be able to stand outside and not get wet when they're waiting to come in, and we want to add a vestibule, that's something that we would then, look at these numbers and say, okay, we have to consider that. So there's different, we're trying to create spots for each one of these options. If you said, all right, we want to really look at just implementing capital projects that are in the book, that would require the building to be emptied. It would require a certain level of alterations in the building, which, as Mike, then, triggers different code requirements. We want to talk to the borough and make sure that we're good. Are they going to say, well, now that you're doing all of those things at one time, because the capital plan and identifying those items is really intended to kind of pick away at those over a series of summers, not address it as one large project. If we're addressing it as one large project, will the borough require, the addition of a fire protection system in the building? Does that require a fire pump? Those are things we'd have to study. That's why these are order of magnitude, and we can only assume so many things as we try to create these options for you. We're thinking about all these other things, which is why my head hurts as I start to talk about it.
Yeah,
Because I'm worried, I don't want you to feel like we're omitting something, because it is possible in an order of magnitude number that it could be under that number or greater than that number, right? As we start to hone in. When you tell us what option you really want to consider, we will absolutely dive in and create a more detailed budget other than just a line item in a chart.
okay. How do you want to proceed? Want to present?
I mean, we ready to go to the,
Did I help?
Yeah, I think that
Make it
was,
muddy.
yeah.
Thank you.
so Doug, do you want to kind of more elaborate on the warm, safe, and dry category, the first three gold columns, to kind of talk further about my statement that, for instance, North High School, you cannot just take that $43.5 million number and assume that is a complete project for the school.
Right, and that's that's a perfect example of, these are, if you took all of those costs over many series of summers and addressed all these items, you know, this is where you would be. We're taking a capital plan that's intended to perform summer projects over a series of months and turning it into a total one lump project, which is more of a renovation than it is, you know, summer projects. So if you took the 43 million at North, again, you're only gonna do what's shown on this chart that you were given with the red boxes. You're not gonna address athletic facilities, you're not gonna address casework, millwork upgrades. You're not gonna address all the doors and hardware, and any painting, furniture fixture, or equipment, flooring, any fuel tanks, glass replacement, handicap accessibility, interior doors, paint, interior wall repairs, kitchen equipment upgrades, masonry work, playground equipment doesn't apply to a high school, parking, stage repairs, student lockers, stair tower repairs or renovations, technology upgrades, toilet rooms, visual display boards, you know, windows, kind of that ancillary stuff. So, and you're not gonna paint, so those are not going in and feeling the building was renovated. You're not gonna see new paint, you're not gonna see any programmatic changes, you're not gonna see, and in fact, it's likely that if we took this project to the township, we would be required to put fire protection in that building. You know, because it doesn't have a full fire protection system throughout. When it was renovated in 2002-ish, they did not take out all the domestic piping above the ceilings. There's a lot of infrastructure that is still the existing 1970s infrastructure. There were, you know, some cost savings things done at that time, presumably because South happened and North was happening with it. So there were, you know, some cost savings, but I am sure that we're gonna have to bring it up to current code when you go in after this level of work, right? Because you're no longer doing this as a summer project, or we're gonna go through this summer and do 7 different things throughout the district. And, you know, we'd have to talk about phasing and impact to, you know, site and all those other things as we start to look at some of these.
So someone might say then, what is this useful for? What this is useful for is for my summer planning. When Doug and I sit down for the next, how many contract years we have? 4 now? When we sit down for the next 4 years come September, I now can see at a quick view, okay, North warm, safe, and dry numbers is $43 million. For me, then it triggers, all right, well, I need to start really looking at North because there's a lot of issues that we need to be looking at there. Like South, almost 26.3 million. I know part of that's roof. So this is more for planning for summer projects than to actually utilize this for what we are doing. So I caution everybody when we're looking at the book is a facilities book. We use a lot of the documents in there for our planning. You can't take that out of context and just fly with numbers because they don't always correlate to what we're talking about with the master plan. There's a lot of planning. Again, I mean, remember the buckets? We had different buckets of money, and there's planning, different types of planning that go into summer projects versus master planning. So I just want to make sure that everybody, when you're going through the book, make sure you're keeping that in the back of your head, that the book is a supporting document for the master plan. It is not the Bible.
And thank you, but the one thing though on here that does apply is and you're right on the money, the column that says improvements as a percentage of renovations.
Yes.
Right, it's about the middle of the document, and you'll see so what we say in the book, and Dave would, I'm sure, agree, when you start to reach 60% of capital improvements versus total renovations, get to the 60%, you start to say, or near the 60%, you start to say, maybe we should be performing total renovations and not doing this over a series of summers, because we're starting to put good money after bad. We should probably start to plan for something more significant. And you can see as you go down that aisle, down that chart, north is higher at about, it's at 50%. I mean, it's approaching the, I need to be totally renovated. And it's darn close. South is lower, and primarily because it has, has newer infrastructure. It has things in it that North doesn't. North still has 1970s infrastructure in a lot of places. It's, 50, 55 years old, right? I'm not saying 55 years old is old, because I'm.
No, not at all.
But it is when it comes to, to soldered joints and building components, right? So, Holland Middle School's at 2.7%, because we went in and we, David and I, and we did a total renovation there. So Newtown Middle School's at 3.6%. Then you get to Richboro Middle, and we really don't even update it much at this point, because it's just off the charts. Churchville Elementary School's at 19%. So you can see as you go down, we get to Welsh, we're at about 98. We get to Newtown, we're at, 121%. And then not again till you get to Chancellor Center, you're at 67%. So, and even if it says it's 70%, which means consider replacement, I would say buildings like Welsh that were constructed, with appropriately sized hallways, classrooms that are appropriately sized, and the age of the building. That's probably not a building that you would need to do the same level of work to that you have on some of these others, right? Like you have these buildings that were from 1990 or 1980s, and not all of those, some of those had substandard spaces, and they had systems that were a little bit different. We know there's some issues at Welsh that need to be addressed. There's an issue in the entire wing with the electrical service that feeds it. Equipment's constantly failing, the equipment's getting tired. But you don't have to go in and do any major work to loading docks, to programmatic spaces. It should be, I think it's one of the buildings that serves the district pretty well. Newtown, a little more tired, and that's why that is listed as a higher percentage. But again, those classrooms are appropriately sized. It has the 10 classroom addition. So you're not looking at doing much more than going in and doing some renovations, paint, new infrastructure, things like that. So the percentages are what we really start to look at in terms of should we do summer projects or should we start talking to administration about considering bigger projects. And I think you're right on the money. Those that are highlighted are the ones you're talking about. So I hope that helps.
I think so. Question?
Okay. That is what we've prepared from the last meeting, the questions that were brought up, and so we're
Yeah,
open to
great.
conversation.
Thank you. All right, floor's open. I see Mr. Hickey.
I have a bunch, but I'll save some of them for later. You just said something, like, for example then, if we're looking at improvements as a percentage of renovations, does that mean that we should be looking at doing those in that order? Discounting Richboro Middle for the time being.
No, I think we talked about the order last time a little bit. I mean, from the school perspective, I think, and I don't want to dictate to the district because you have other reasons why you might do one school before another. I think Welsh is probably in a little bit better shape than Newtown, right? So arguably.
Okay, yeah, arguably, yeah,
Because I don't deal with it day to day like you do.
correct. I mean, there's arguments made for both ways.
Like, I just look at Newtown for an example. I look at that building, I really don't think the building is that bad, in that bad of shape. And then I look at the cost though to do it, and anywhere from 25 to $33 million, I just kind of, and if we don't need to do anything with the classrooms like we did with Richboro Elementary, I just, that one just off the top,
So think
I
about,
don't understand, like,
think about what we just did, other than put in the classroom addition on the back. This would be the same level of renovation that we just did at Richboro. And Richboro now is a very similar size to Newtown, because we put the 10 classrooms in the back. Is the square footage exactly, I don't know off the top of my head, but we would be doing the same level of renovation that we did at Richboro. We'd be replacing the roof, we'd be replacing the HVAC equipment, we would be painting, updating technology, updating the cafeteria, replacing all the plumbing in the kitchen for the cafeteria. Making sure that renovating the bathrooms. New lighting, new piping throughout, new ductwork. So it would be at the same level of renovation, and that's, I understand that with the 10 classroom addition, I forget how much money off the top of my head it was, but you would still be in the same level of renovation as you did at Hillcrest, as you did at Richboro.
Yeah, because, I mean, I look at all these numbers and I'm like, what's the real number? What's the real number? For example, what is the real number to renovate Council Rock North without having to build a new school?
We have that.
We
have that in the
have
chart.
that number in the chart.
$120 million.
Again, that's why these numbers are for planning purposes for me. If everybody wants to take this and put this in your folder and go back to the sheets that we looked at last week, those are the more accurate numbers.
But the renovation numbers on here are, pretty reasonable, right?
They match.
Right. The renovation numbers are $325. Now, this is based on today's cost. Numbers are subject to change based on the economy, right? So I don't know what's going to happen, but that's today. It could be different tomorrow.
This was yesterday, not today.
Yeah, so full renovation cost of $325, which is $250 a square foot plus 30% fees and contingency. That's the building, but that doesn't include anything we're doing on site, because you can't compare the numbers if you start throwing in, the site costs.
And like I said, I guess the reason I look is I look around. Like, for example, I'll just use like some of the other schools that are non-public schools in this area, in Bucks County. They've been around for 30 years, like St. Andrews, that's been around for 30 years now. I don't see St. Andrews putting $30–50 million into their renovations, and that's a fine school. Like I said, I just question some of the stuff we do as to what's really necessary and how much money we're actually spending on these buildings, because every dollar that we're spending is a dollar that we're not using to educate kids. And as I said, I just question a lot of just the numbers in general. What are we spending it on? Because I don't see other places, especially in the non-public sector, spending these kind of dollars on these kind of schools. And I think all of our schools are very, most of them are gorgeous, but I look at a Newtown Elementary and I'm not ashamed to walk into that building as being a Council Rock building, or Welsh Elementary or Council Rock South. I look at Council Rock South. To me, I consider Council Rock South a brand new building, and then I'm looking at $120,000 for renovations, and I kind of I don't understand it. Maybe it's just because I have absolutely no mechanical.
Well, and I think what a lot of these costs are, especially for like South's not cosmetic. South is everything that's behind the walls. So it's all the air conditioning, all the UVs in the classrooms. It's, Doug, help me out here, I'm.
Well, it's that, it's
roofing,
it's the entire roof, which is a significant number for the size of the
$6 or
building.
$7 million.
And actually, there is, it's beyond cosmetic, the metal panels on the facade are starting to become problematic, right? The finish is just about off of the panels.
And we're starting to get some water infiltration.
And it's, things are getting a little bit of that. The translucent panels at the gym, some of them are sliding within the aluminum frame, and they're getting some water in from those. So there are some issues there from just materials that, I know it feels new. It was built in 2002, so it's 23 years old already. And that's about the time where today's equipment starts to get, near the end of its useful life. The stuff that was put in Soul Finestone when it was built in the 60s, I mean, look at Richboro. that original equipment from the 60s, that stuff was like a battleship, just kept on going. But today's equipment is not produced in the same way that old equipment is. I mean, it's not going to last you 30 or 50 years anymore. So that, that's something some of this is, we don't want, a building to fail with, kids in it, that are learning and in a teaching and learning environment. So we're trying to be proactive in replacing some of these systems at a time that works for you and not at a time when emergency dictates what happens, so.
Ms. Stone?
So if we look at the quick and dirty sheet that we have here, and looking in that, those items that you have, improvements as a percent of renovations, you said once they hit over 50%, you should work over 60, right?
60%.
So you have 4 items in yellow, and we're not looking at Richboro Middle School, but the other 3 items, Welch, Newtown, and the Chancellor Center, if you look at those 3 items and then look at the numbers for total costs on these sheets, right? Then it totals around 66 million or 67 million. And those seem to be the 3 most crucial items right now that, seems that maybe we could decide on taking that action, and then north would be something we could look down the line when we have, gets a little closer to our needs and then we have more money to borrow. I don't know.
Ms. Khan?
So asking, I guess, I know we're in the middle of budget approval, but I know we need to start planning. So moving out of Chancellor can happen in a month, but I know it's going to take a process of going out to bid, supplies, figuring out the actual design and plan for Schrader and CHA for, let's say, hypothetically, if we did Marina Mulch at renovating total, according to this district analysis for the facilities master planning, $31.4 million. Newtown L at $27 million. And if we took the $7.6 million Chancellor Center renovations, which includes the water, HVAC, stairs, slab, and parking lot, which I think that's what Ms. Stone was referring to, that gets us to about that $67 million. When we're thinking about in finance, we talked about, what was it, the $84 million we kind of had ish, right, Mr. Rapp, for capital or improvements, borrowing power for capital improvements. So for budgeting for next year, how soon do you need to have a decision? I'm assuming before we approve the budget.
We wouldn't, that wouldn't enter into the budget. We already have in the budget that money that we would use to borrow that other, to make that borrowing, so it's already budgeted.
Okay, so we wouldn't have.
Budgeted that last year.
Okay, so
And we continue to carry that number over from here.
Okay. All right, so then, I guess, can I just finish the second part of my question? I'm gonna ask Mr. Taylor then, if out of those 3 things that I just named, I think in the past you said Chancellor maybe about a year, how much lead time do you need then for Marina Mulch and Newtown L?
I'll let David join this conversation because he'll be the guy, and his team will be hopefully the guy documenting the project. So we would, generally, there's a year of approvals and documentation. So we'd have, a year of it, and then these are likely, phased projects because the size of these buildings won't allow you to move kids over to Richboro at this point. So these are all projects that have to be phased with modulars, and they'll happen over likely a 2-year process. So those are, all the costs we have to investigate as well.
So 3 years approximately.
3 years, depending on when they're approved, because we're absolutely going to need 2 summers.
Okay, and could they be done simultaneously? Or would they have to be staggered or 2 separate?
No, again, that
Before you
comes,
answer that question, we would definitely have to look at.
that's what I was going to say.
Okay, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No,
I didn't want you to say something that.
Okay,
From a financing standpoint, that's up to the district. From us observing construction and managing two projects concurrently, that's not an issue.
Okay.
But that's a district decision, not ours.
Right.
Ms. Oseki?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, there's a lot on the table, and I think it's good that we start to kind of narrow these things down. I think Linda's on the right track here, three items that are urgent, and, maybe we push off north, south, some of these other projects until we have a little bit more borrowing power. I do think it would be helpful to have a conversation about where everybody stands. I guess it's all public, so maybe we should, discuss it. Like we talked in our education meeting about the grade bands and, the decision there might impact what we do at either or both of the elementary schools. To me, as much as I would love to go to a 6, 7, 8 model, but I guess first of all, to me, a 6th grade center is kind of off the table at this point. I don't see the advantages to that. And as we talk about a 6, 7, 8, I would love that, but I don't see how we can afford it. I don't see that money there, and I didn't hear from the administration that there's a huge educational advantage, and I think we all agree that we need to be putting as much money as possible into kids. And, to me, the educational benefit isn't really there, and we should spend that money on more teachers or smaller classrooms or, something else rather than a 6, 7, 8 model. But I think that's the kind of discussion we need to start having so that we can narrow down these topics. Of course, as much as we are putting money directly towards kids, that also leads me to the conclusion that the Chancellor Center renovation is the best choice.
Thank you. Holly?
Yeah. This is extremely helpful for me in terms of to understand how you come with these numbers and what the priorities are. And I know sometimes when you walk into a building, you cannot really see things that are falling apart, but if you have knowledge, I guess you can tell. I agree with Linda's point that these 3 buildings seem to be the priority in terms of needs. I also agree with Tracy that I don't see the educational benefit of a 6th grade center or like a 6, 7, 8 grade band. So I feel good because I think we are starting to narrow down our options. And my understanding is that if we decide now, we're not going to need to spend the money until 3 years down the road. So we don't even need to issue bonds at this point, but we have to be ready then. This is not going to affect directly our budget because we borrow money to do any of this. But as a good plan, we have to decide which way we want to go. Always prioritize. And if we want to, if North is next, we can probably start thinking from a financial perspective, create a plan how to build the borrowing power down the road to address that. And I do at some point want to go back to the Chancellor Center and try to understand what would be the best way, because even if we lease somewhere, right, what happens to this building? We cannot just let it collapse, right? Do we have to spend money to get it, viable? I mean, we cannot sell it, right? I mean, what are the other options? It's not only how much it's going to cost to lease or renovate, but if we decide to go somewhere else, which is probably a very good option, right? What happens here? Do we have to spend money, and how much money? Because we cannot just walk away, right? What do you think, Doug? I know it's a loaded question.
So I think that's a district decision as well, because I think only you know what you would, if you decided this wasn't the building you wanted to remain in, what the disposition of the building would be. You can purchase buildings in different, varying conditions, from the outside. So one condition makes the price maybe more attractive to someone that wants to perform work to a building and get the building at a lesser price, and another, increases the price and maybe puts some of those people out of that option. It really comes down to, does the district want to do work for others if you're going to get rid of the building or not, right? Or does it, if you do the work, will you recover those monies in the sale? Because that would be the bigger question. I think, how much money do you put into it, and will you recover those if you sell it? I just don't know what you're considering, as a group. So I think you could do it different ways depending on what your thought process is.
I mean, we got estimates for selling it and they were not good, right? So, I mean, what is really like a viable option if you cannot sell it? If we don't do anything, it's gonna just collapse in one day?
Well, I don't think it's like I don't think it's in serious, concern for collapsing, or it would be like a 10 and I'd be in here saying, like, this has to be done yesterday. You guys have to make a decision, right? We know that it does leak when it rains. We know that that is clearly causing problems on the outside, from the outside in, and it has to be fixed from the outside in. I mean, I don't know if it still happens, but I could tell you, back when I was here, there were times where water was coming into the data rack through the conduit, it's heading out towards Chancellor Street. So it still happens. It needs to be, and the water comes in behind the electrical panel, but it doesn't get to the electrical panel. But, so.
Okay.
Exactly. So that's kind of my point. When does that happen? It's hard to say. I don't think there's an imminent concern for failure. There's no signs on the inside of the building that say that the walls are structurally challenged, but there definitely are signs that water's getting through the walls, because you can go downstairs and see the plaster more in the back, where it's an even greater concern with what it's doing to the walls. The salts are coming out through the plaster, and it needs to be addressed. And the longer we wait, the more the interior work is starting to be challenged by it. So.
Thank you. I have a question and then some comments, but I did want to point out that since Ms. Pally brought up the sale price, based on those assessments that we got 3 properties assessed, right? The most valuable property in terms of potential sale is Richmond Middle School property. And I think we should keep that in mind. My question would be, Taylor, if we decided this month or next month we wanted to proceed with the Chancellor renovation, at what point, in terms of timeline that required for planning and so forth and so on, at what point we'll be looking at evacuating the building and starting the work?
So when you decide that this is the project you want and what project you want, we would then want to hone in on the budget and make sure we're all in agreement with where the actual costs are. And from that board approval point, knowing what the cost is and what the scope is, and you're approving the team from that point, you're looking at a year of, I think it's a year, I think it's a year of design and approvals. And then the board, the administrative team would have to be out, from that year point. So we would work to, when we know when we're going to award the bids, work with Jess and make sure we get the bids for moving out of this building to wherever you may be moving, so that it is vacated for the contractors by that start date. So you'd have a little bit of overlap, you doing that while we're receiving. You probably want to wait till you receive bids to be sure that you're happy with the bids. Yeah. Because once you move, you kind of, showed your hand. So probably best to wait, and then the contractors have to go through procurement of materials and submittals and all those things. So you'd have time it's only a 5-day move out, based on what you said. So you'd have time to move out after we get the bids. So that's about a year.
So yes, that's
A year from when you guys
make the
approve
decision.
project.
Right, which, they're talking about another 3 months.
It could be two,
From
yeah.
Decision to approve, yeah. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to note, number one, I'm glad Ms. Osecki brought it up and Ms. Powley spoke to it. I think the sixth grade center idea, I think I haven't sensed a whole lot of support for it. And what I heard from Dr. Barnes about minimizing transitions tells me that sixth grade center is probably not a good idea. The 6th, 7th, 8th grade band adjustment, I think, potentially is a valuable idea, but number one, we have a whole lot of things we want to look at, including high school schedule and all sorts of stuff. And there's the cost involved too. So in my personal opinion, the 6th, 7th, 8th grade band adjustment is off the table too. There are a couple other things I want to mention. One is parity. We've been doing renovations to the same level, the same standard across the district, and I think that's the right way to do it. A renovation at Hillcrest looks like a renovation at Richboro Elementary School, looks like the renovation at Saul Finestone, and that's the way we've been operating. And I would be reluctant to step back and say, okay, we're gonna renovate a school, but we're not gonna do this, this, and this anymore. We're only gonna do half of it, because I think that would be a step back from parity. And we've talked a lot about parity, even down to the playground level, making sure playgrounds have similar equipment. And when we renovate a building, we have a standard, and it's not exorbitant. We don't do excessive renovations and add bells and whistles and all sorts of features that are nice to haves. And the last thing I'll mention is, as far as Chancellor is concerned, I firmly believe in students first always, and it's not why I wore it tonight, but and our highest priority on facilities ought to be those that directly serve students, school buildings. On the other hand, there's 75 people who work here approximately, and I think we all value their efforts very much. I mean, they're essential. They're essential to the school district. And we have to give them reasonably good workspace. The HVAC system here is failing. We really need to replace the HVAC system. And this building has its charms, but it can use a fair amount of improvements and the kind of things that you would normally do in renovation. Repainting, floor refinishing, that kind of thing, adjusting workspaces as possible. So when we're looking at numbers, a $32 million renovation at Maureen Welsh, a $27 million renovation at Newtown Elementary School, I think the operative figure ought to be $16 million for Chancellor. I think doing the $7 million, which is the bare minimum essential, doesn't make sense. If we were to evacuate this building, move everybody out, do the essential work that's needed, I think it only makes sense to go ahead and do the full renovation at $16 million. Yeah, it doubles the price, but it also gives you a building that's up to standard for us for the long term. Because once we move people out and do a renovation, we're not coming back 5 years later and doing another renovation. So we ought to do what's necessary and what ought to be done at once, as opposed to just what's necessary, is my opinion. Please, Ms. Stone.
Can we kind of first get a consensus that we're in agreement that we're not going to try to attempt a sixth grade center or 6th, 7th, and 8th?
Like eliminate some
Can
stuff.
we eliminate those as options and then,
Ms.
just
Horner.
because we haven't gotten any.
Yeah.
What about Holland Middle School? What's the capacity there and where are thoughts for that? That's what, I'm with everyone on that 6th grade center. I don't see the value of that, but I just want to make sure that our middle schools and what they've, capacity that they've talked about Holland Middle School, we've got to bring that forefront.
You mean relative to the 6, 7, 8 grade band?
If it's 6, 7, 8 band,
Yeah.
or there's something there that we've got to make sure that we're looking at.
Okay, good.
So Holland Middle School, as of April 1st, has an enrollment of 959 students. And I don't know, Doug, if you remember what when the two middle schools were done, what that number was.
Yeah, they were 900 buildings. Yeah, when we did this quick math last time, we showed a need for approximately 150 students total for both buildings to make that work out for the greatest enrollment that you might see. And that jives with your 75 over right now.
We created a number for
We did.
additions to make that
We have that.
happen. That was in the last round of.
Yeah, Pally just spotted that.
Enrollment at Newton.
833.
This is a Doug question. What's the average hallway width of Holland versus Newtown Middle?
What?
What's the average hallway width? Average.
I am certain that the Newtown Middle hallways are new and they're designed to, a dimension that we would utilize, if they're double stacked, they're probably 10 feet, 9, 10 feet.
I think they were within 2 feet.
What's that?
I think they were within 2 feet of each other. But
Yeah, I don't think that they're much different. I think Holland is around that same number.
All parts of the building?
Not all, no. And of course, Newtown has
This is
that-
memory too,
Newtown has that very wide central.
Yeah, Main Street is.
So they had that central core that serves as, yes, it's grand, but it's also the lobby for the auditorium, it's the lobby for the, any of those big spaces, the gym, any events you have, that's where people can kind of stage before they go.
The Holland one has that also, but it's probably about a third of the length and serves the same spaces.
It's true,
Auditorium and gym.
Correct.
it's true. So we tried to make those buildings as equal as we could when we designed those, and it was actually, it's a process that I'm proud of, because we brought David's team in, and we brought Breslin's team in, and we sat with 2 different architects, and everybody embraced the projects, and we designed very similar projects, very similar square footage, same capacities, and it went really well.
Just history, they were within 3,000 feet of each other, and they were $4 million apart, the new versus renovation.
So we're looking at one of the grids. This is the January grid. From the February meeting, yeah, it's dated on the paper January, and it talks about additions to middle schools.
There's a March, do you have the March one?
I have a March one as well.
I think that's when we added the option for the 2 schools.
Which was, if my memory serves, $107 million.
Yeah.
For both. To up the capacity of 500 additional students to both.
That's right, you're right on the number.
Wait, that again.
In here, option 1, grade band adjustment, K to 5 and 6 to 8. Middle of the page, the last one, the last bullet point, 107,575.
500.
I believe that's the one you're referring to.
That's exactly what it's referring to.
107 million?
That's what it says.
Yeah, that's
For both middle
500.
schools to upgrade capacity.
To go from,
additional
to go to
funds.
6 to
6
8.
through 8.
6 through 8.
That's a 6 through 8.
Yeah, that's,
But the
That's
bullet
right.
ones are also a choice if we keep, if we just do 7 and 8, then it's 59 and
right.
13.
But there's also small additions to current grade 7, 8 middle schools to accommodate 150 students, plus dining space
That's
at
12 and a half.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
Yeah, that, and that doesn't get 6, 7, and 8, that's just in.
Right.
Right,
Space.
right,
7.
exactly.
Yeah, I think that's the one.
That corrects the Holland under is what it means.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm sorry? That's for both middle schools. Do we,
No, this
107 was.
additions to current middle schools?
That's total, Mr. Tate, yeah.
Yeah, but do we need an addition at Newtown Middle?
No. So what that was doing was it was converting the large group spaces inside, where we were adding walls to make one more team inside the building.
Right, yeah, I recall that.
Yep.
Very creative. Do we actually need that space, though? Is that a spend we need to do?
You may not. You may get very close with just an addition to Holland.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What, Mr. Vicky?
That was my, like, I didn't understand because you have two middle schools that hold the same number of people. One building has 950 and we seem to be doing very well at Holland. It's, things seem to work. And we have 833 kids at Newtown. I don't understand why we need to do anything to Newtown. Like, why do you have to touch Newtown at all? To me, it actually has room that would accommodate another 120 people.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, so I'm not sure, like, the one that you just brought up about, like, why do we have to accommodate 500 additional students at the middle schools?
For 6, 7, and 8.
That was
That's for 6, 7, and 8.
That was to add sixth grade.
So we haven't broken out just doing the addition to Holland Middle School and the cafeteria.
Yes, it's right here, it's 12 and a half.
No,
that's
that's combined with Newtown.
Well, it's not hard to come up with here, though. It's within, I think we had $1 million and, or something like that.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, it was a very small number in the Newtown.
Newtown,
For middle, okay.
in my notes, it says it's only.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's what he said last time.
So maybe what we need to be talking about is, can we accommodate the Maureen Welch, Newtown Elementary renovations, Chancellor Center renovations, and the small addition to Holland Middle School? Can we afford that? Mr. Rapp?
So what I would want to do, once you have that list,
Yeah,
is then sit with my estimating team
oh, yeah,
and begin to put together a more, dialed in budget that isn't based on assumptions, right? Just have a quick sit down and make sure we're talking about the same things, so we're all on the same page with the total estimated costs.
good stuff.
I had one other thought. If we're moving out anyway, and I understand we want to try to put that. I'd like to see us agreeing to that $7.8 million upgrade to this building. And then if we needed to go to the 16 million, make that decision later based on, I don't know what we're gonna find when they start doing work. All the exterior stuff, it may not be something that we wanna go further
This
to
is
start
not,
knocking down interior walls.
this statement's not meant to sway your decision in any way. It's just a statement. If you go in that pathway, it will extend the length of the project. Because if you complete the $7 million and then you say, okay, we have the money to move forward with the rest, you have to go through the design and approval process, bid it out, and then do the work. So you're kind of creating two projects and pushing them together,
So cost you,
which will cost, that's another point, that will cost you. So your $15, $16 million number now goes to 20 million. I don't know what it would be, I'm just
But
using an example.
I would think you're not gonna be knocking down interior walls while you're digging out the foundation and so on.
You can do work absolutely in here as you're doing.
yeah, we would do,
work.
the team would be doing the mechanical, electrical, plumbing, general contractors will all be doing work concurrently, throughout the building, so that they meet that 1-year timeline.
Contractor access and work, like district employee access requirements are totally different.
The other thing would be breaking it in half like that would mean the duration of the project would be extended pretty significantly from having people in Richboro Middle School or leased space for a year to 2 years or more. I want to follow up on Ms. Horner made a good point about Holland Middle School. And I'm wondering what the solution is there, if an addition is needed. Is the situation such at Holland that addition is required? Because if it is, that's perhaps what we should be talking about.
I would encourage you to go visit around lunchtime.
That'll answer the question.
I can imagine.
That was part of.
I've been in South at lunchtime.
That comments,
That's part of
that
the-
core space is just
Yeah.
undersized. You add more people, it just becomes, more students, it becomes a real difficult time. I mean, you can only add so many lunches before you're eating breakfast and lunch at the same time.
We have to
And
keep
I'm
within
gonna-
the limit too. You have to keep it within the state limit of the hours,
Yeah.
so.
And I'm gonna, the third rail here, but Mr. Hickey was talking about the unused capacity at Newtown Middle School. And then we have overcrowding to some extent at Holland Middle School. There could be an adjustment in the feeder pattern to Holland if it was necessary. I mean, would that be better than an addition? I don't know.
That's the third rail.
It is the third rail.
Third rail, but that, we have to talk about it because of Wrightstown.
Yeah, I mean.
But I was just gonna say, it doesn't solve the problem because Wrightstown is on the opposite path.
And you have Holland Elementary that if we keep growing there, that's gonna continue to go. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
I know, I mean.
right into Holland Middle.
Yeah, I think we have a responsibility to talk about that option as we're talking about building additions. I mean, do you build an addition here because it's overcrowded while you have underutilized space over here? That's all. I'm not advocating anything.
So should we have a census on whether or not we want to entertain a 6, 7, 8 center or 6, and take those off the table? Because that means building. That's a lot more money.
Yeah. Well, that's sort of,
I mean, that's
yeah.
something really should we
Yeah, let's go
make
around.
sure we're all in.
I hear what you're
Step one.
saying, that's like proving a negative. So I
I
could
don't
go at it the
know.
other way and say, does anybody support pursuing the 6, 7, 8 band at this point? 3. I think that's it. Pardon me?
I mean, I like the idea, but look at the money. We cannot spend so much money doing it. It's just a financial decision. I mean, because there's so many other priorities. It would be great to have 6, 7, 8 centers, new schools everywhere. But look at how much it's going to cost. That's the problem.
Mr. Douglas?
So, yeah, I'll just go back to the fact that if we get a high increase in enrollment in the next 10 years, we're going to still be looking at elementary capacity. So that's where the 6th, 7th, and 8th is more of it might cost more now, but it's kind of like a long-term thing. And I'm not saying, I think it's going to take a few years to figure this whole thing out, to be honest with you. But the 6th, 7th, and 8th, you can go around the table right now and say no, but as we have time, and this is a good conversation today, I think we're all grinding our wheels here. I just look at Wrightstown, Holland, you look at the middle schools, and to me, there's viability and value to a 6th, 7th, and 8th program. Where I find it an issue is that north and south feeder programs, if you do have, let's say, you either do 6th and 7th and 8th for the 2 middle schools, or you would actually look at reverting to a 3 middle school solution. And I think we can look here and say, yeah, at first glance, it's off the table. But when I'm talking long term, and I see a lot of kids, every house that's selling is bringing lots of little kids into the school district. I think that we have to I'm not saying one way or the other, but it's a wide open process. So it's unfortunate that we just don't have an unlimited budget and everything can't be done overnight. So it's very difficult. I'm sad to sit here and actually see us have to try to make these big decisions with no real easy outcome, no real easy solution. But we're working towards it. But as far as 6th, 7th, and 8th is concerned, my point is that we have to look long-term in the fact that there's probably going to be a lot of people moving in with, I could see enrollment going up, and will we be okay? And we're already talking, we're talking 17 million for administrative building versus 11, that if you're talking about the middle schools being 50 million too much to solve the entire district, elementary where the kids are, then we have to have that discussion. But financially, oh boy, so we have our work cut out for us. So I think that 6th, 7th, and 8th, we can stop talking about it now, but I think it's going to come up in the future again.
Yeah, things change. Still.
Well, I was gonna, because I saw you raise your hand, Mike, did you have a suggestion or a solution? If we went 6, 7, 8, where we would go?
Well, I'm struggling like the rest of you. And one of the things that I'm struggling with is the juxtaposition. On the one hand, we're saying that a building or a project should be evaluated based upon its educational impact. On another direction, I heard a comment about saying, I'd love to be able to do it, but look at the cost. And that was about a building that doesn't have educational impact. So I think to sidestep that for a second, I want to go back to this sheet. We discussed that this is just a kind of an order of magnitude, not specific, grain of salt, I believe was the term, to take this as not being a project inclusive. Mr. Taylor indicated that this doesn't include site costs, which makes a lot of sense to not include site costs. So these numbers change. These numbers change because this is just what Jess uses Spinda uses for planning. I think we're getting close to, I think maybe these numbers that we talked about here, the elementary schools, for example, and to talk to your estimators to figure out what those are. That's probably worthwhile to make this a real project. I don't think we should be making a decision when we don't have conclusive information. I think Chancellor Center is a beautiful old building. To Mr. Hickey's point, there are other beautiful old buildings in Bucks County that still teach kids, depending upon how old you go. I know of at least one, which is basically the same age as Chancellor. So there's a certain element of history, which is important. There's a lot of sentimental value, which is also important. But when we're discussing that this district doesn't have the money to say, and that educational impact is important, to desire to put $7 to $16 million into a $1 million building, talk about finances, that's a difficult decision to make. Does that mean you don't do it? No. I'd love to see this building fixed. I'm not too crazy about paying for it. Mr. Tate and I, we had a conversation about this very thing, what was it, about a week ago? Maybe a little bit less, plus or minus. And I shared this sentiment. But at the same point, we had a whole meeting that included the Education Committee to talk about educational impact of 6, 7, and 8. And yes, Mr. Barnes demonstrated that it's difficult to track, but disruption was trackable. So I agree that 6th grade center is off the table. I can go that far. But to push 6, 7, and 8th grade band and off the table also, I think that's premature. To pick one project out of all of these that we know we can afford regardless of what it is, and say this is what we're doing first, I think does a disservice to the master plan process. The whole point of this, as Mr. Taylor pointed out, is that these projects take time. And you can phase these, you can sequence them. You can't phase the project, just to be clear, but you can phase when you start one project and start another project. And I think we should be evaluating that on actual project costs. So I would like to see this sheet sort of reduced to looking at, I'll throw it out there, the 2 elementary schools that are really high on this number list, MMW and Newtown Elementary School. I think that it's worthwhile also because there's so many different variables that talk about Chancellor, that should be another one that's there. And so those are the 3. Yeah, but that's order of magnitude. We're talking about moving this forward. That's the reason why they produced that, was to help this body gravitate around some that have an educational impact, have a maintenance or renovation requirement to do, and that we can afford. So I think that we're moving this forward by looking at that and getting this down. There's probably a couple others here that we see that are in low percentages. Maybe that could be added in later. I don't know, maybe it could be pushed off till later. And then this leaves you with the problem of north and south. And I agree with you, Mr. Tate, we have gone through sequentially. In fact, on this list, there's like 3 or 4 projects that the district has just renovated that require something else. And it would do a disservice if we do something different to what we've done before. And if you look at the MMW and the Newtown Elementary School, it reminds me of a movie. I'm not going to get into it because it doesn't really relate. But effectively, the cost to renovate it, to do the essential things, is $25 million for both. And to do the full thing is $30 million. So, and to Mr. Taylor's point, once it gets above 60, and these are at 98, 121, it's time to sort of look at that from the economy of scale. So that makes sense to look at that at 60. I still think we should sort of be looking at 6, 7, and 8 and not brush it off the table. And I do value all the employees in here, and clearly they value our children. But I think to pull any one of these, to pull the 2 elementary schools out and not look at Chancellor is the same to me as pulling Chancellor out and not looking at the elementary schools. Or the grade band of 6, 7, and 8, which probably has the most educational impact and probably solves the most of our future as far as this district's overcrowding. It solves Wrightstown. It solves Holland Middle School. It solves other areas like Feinstein, which in 10 years, whether it's right or wrong, is projected to be overcrowded also. That solves that. So to Mr. Hidalgo's point, there's a lot of value in that as well. And being a student's first district board administration, to brush that off the table, I don't know. I would be questioning, am I really students first? And do I really care about educational impact?
If I may, I agree with you on multiple points. And that's why I've phrased my question about the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade band. I didn't say, let's take it off the table. I said, is there support? I mean, things, to Mr. Hidalgo's point, things could look quite different a year or 2 from now, and we may be back to looking at the 6th and 8th grade band. You know, what we do today doesn't preclude us from doing it next year or the year after, so I agree with you. I'm really liking your suggestion that maybe we ought to move forward and get estimates for the 2 elementary schools in Chancellor. That really appeals to me. I will disagree with you on the $1 million building. I mean, this building's sale value, according to the appraisal, was less than $1 million, but its value to us in terms of the replacement value is in the range of 21 million or more, because it is the home to our administration. And if we were to replace it, we're looking at $21 million estimates and so forth. So, I mean, this is, to the district, the way we currently use it, a very valuable building. And I like your suggestion about going forward and commissioning estimates for those three projects, the two elementary schools and Chancellor Center.
So totally agree with Mike on looking in more detail about these three renovations or buildings. And the thing with Chancellor Center though is if we decide to lease, right? And there is a cost to that. So, and I mean, it's probably, I don't know, I'm gonna round it, maybe it's about $800,000 a year, right? So if you lease, usually, you know, if you don't have plans to build something else or renovate, then you stay. So within, what, 10 years, you already have spent the money to renovate this building and you don't own it. You don't own the space. So this is something against. So it's not an easy decision, the Chancellor's, and I agree. And there is a lot of sentimental value, but even from a pure financial perspective, I don't see necessarily the value of leasing versus renovating. I don't see a lot of other options. I mean, that's why I agree to look in more detail and try to figure out, make a decision about it.
Just a quick response.
Yeah.
Moving to Richboro Middle for administration was about $75,000.
No, for one,
So I
that's
think-
for 1 year, Mike, right?
Yeah, well, no, that's
For 1 year.
the leasing of, let's say, $700,000 is for 1 year. But to move administration to Richboro Middle for 1 year is about $75,000. But it would be,
Plus 211, right?
Plus the,
No, because
then, well, the chiller was 25 and the move-in was about 50.
25 plus the 15,000.
15,000 a month.
Okay.
It's 211, 862.
No, it would make
Plus
no
moving.
sense to move, to lease for just 1 year. Absolutely no sense.
There we go.
Yeah,
Good.
I
That's-
totally agree
We're
with that.
getting to the same spot,
Yes.
coming from different angles.
Exactly.
Except, go ahead.
Yeah, I was also gonna say that I even said, this building is valuable. So I'm not discounting its value. I don't, and I think it's difficult to walk away from this, but it's also very emotional. And I understand all of that. And I think that this needs to be put in the context of something larger. So the 6, 7, and 8 cost that we have for basically both middle schools, as we've discussed, may get shifted a little bit because Newtown might have a little bit less of a need than Holland Middle does. So I think that bears a little bit of study. Whether we can afford all of this, I don't know. But that's where I think these estimates come into play a little bit. So, I mean, even if we were to say, if we were to equate this, many or some people in this district may live in $1 million homes, or maybe $750,000 or $600,000 homes. For order of magnitude, let's say it's $1 million. That's where it gets difficult. If your home was worth that, even if you decided this is going to be my forever home, as an architect, it's very difficult to get somebody to say, yeah, I'll put 7, 8, $15 million in this. So to put it in that perspective, I think helps. Does it mean don't do it? No, I'm not saying that. Just adding, and that's where, as a board member, to your point, Ms. Pally, we do have to remove some of that and make a financial decision. And that's difficult. So yeah, and there's other emotional things that are packed in here, and it's difficult for us to separate that. So I just wanted to sort of respond to those two pieces that were brought up.
Thank you, Mr. Hickey, and then Ms. Stone.
Yeah, I do agree, like I said, I'm in favor of the grade bands. Is it something that we necessarily thing I think about the grade bands is it relates to every facility that we have, you know, so it would be nice to have a decision on it, whether or not, you know, we're gonna, something to look into or not. I don't think we're making any decision on Chancellor yet, so I'll hold my thoughts on Chancellor now, other than I do agree with everybody else saying that I don't think we should lease. I mean, it's why we got out of LSAC, because of the exorbitant cost of leasing as opposed to owning. You know, one of the things that wasn't thrown about, as I said, I mean, the possibility also exists of rebuilding Richboro Middle at a cost, because one of the things we could do if we did Richboro Middle, we could also move Twiningford out and sell that property as well, and move all those facilities over to that site. Somebody did raise the possibility today of buying a building for $5.2 million, and I believe you said that building was in good shape. And I'm not, you know, when you gave the three options of leasing, you said one had a lease with an option to buy. And I believe the sale price was $5.2 million, which could possibly accommodate all the needs that we have. Like I said, I don't think we're making a decision on it, but like you said, something to think about, and I agree, let's get some of these costs to figure out where we were. I'm gonna throw a major wrench into all of these discussions, which, since somebody brought up the word parity, I believe it might have been.
That was me.
It's not on this list, and it's been a bugaboo of mine. I don't see anything on here that talks about a stadium at Council Rock South.
That's on these,
What's that?
that's on these forms.
Okay, I was looking at the other ones, but I mean, I think that should also, if we're gonna be talking about what we're gonna do and what we're gonna spend, I think that that should be, in all fairness, a part of the conversation. Whether it's foolish money spent or not, one of the things that I said about this building was, and I'll say the same thing with a stadium, is, you know, what if the possibility of raising money, you know, so the cost isn't exorbitant, you know, if the borough or the township or whoever can raise millions of dollars to put into this building, you know, then it becomes a little easier to swallow to put money into it to help out and fix the rest of it. And the same with the stadium. Like I said, as you all know at this point, I have major reservations about this building and what to do with it, from a variety of reasons. I'll hold most of them off till another time, but, you know, I agree with looking into it, because if we're not gonna make a decision tonight, then I'm just, you know, I'm willing to look into it, see what some of these actual costs are, and go from there.
Thank you, Mr. Rapp and then Ms. Stone.
You brought up the $5.2 million for that building. Before any of the board goes down any road to discuss that, that would need to be, we would need to talk about that in the executive session. That building before you went any further with that.
Thank you. Good. Thank you. Ms. Stone.
If we are to continue a conversation about Chancellor Center, and then this regrading 6 through 8, can we still agree that Welsh and Newtown Elementary still need to have these renovations made? Can we still make that commitment? They are the ones that are listed as immediate needs. Is that something we can at least move forward with as a group?
I was thinking the same thing. It's sort of, Mr. Roosevelt made the suggestion. Ms. Polly liked it. I like it. I heard Mr. Hickey say he likes it. How do others feel about proceeding with cost estimates for those 3 projects? Ms. Kahan?
Okay, I thought I said that already before we started the conversation, but okay, I'll say it again. I won't take as long. I'm, you know, I guess I'll talk about 6th grade center. I'm noted that kindergarten center, noted that, even though it was discussed in here in some of the documentation. I know we had extensive conversation about the 6 through 8 banding. I think for me, for now, we just need to set it off. It's not a no, and I think it's something we should explore further down the line. That's the whole point of this master facilities planning. to think long-term, so it's not a decision I think that needs to be made right now. Ms. Horner did bring up the Holland Middle issue that still kind of is there, the Wrightstown Elementary capacity issue, but in terms of planning financially for building and facilities, I agree that we should be definitely look into Newtown Elementary, Maureen M. Welch, the options for Chancellor Center, whether that is the 7.6 or 16 million. I'm not convinced on which one, but I'd like to see definitely financials for, you know, what that would mean if we can afford these things. That was that, right? In terms of thought process? Okay.
So you're saying?
Yes, I would like.
Going forward with estimating those 3 projects?
Yes. That, if that's the only decision-making or head nod you're looking for, yes. If there's more, then let me know.
No, I think that's,
I was gonna add, I think Ms. Horner made a really good point. I think Holland Middle should be on that list too.
that's 4, okay. That's small.
And I don't know about Wrightstown, you know, none of these solve Wrightstown, so.
But
It's a different discussion.
Holland Middle could be that discussion of whether we build or as, you know, Mr. Kate, I believe it was that brought up of realignment. I don't know. I don't know if that's gonna be a finance or in, you know, one of our analysis sheets here, it talks about realigning.
Yeah, or in addition to Newtown Elementary, right?
Depends on how much money we can.
Schrader?
We can price in addition to Newtown L separately from the renovation project. So that can give you the out for Wrightstown as an example.
Okay, thank you. So speaking of pricing, can you price for us the pricing? I mean, if we're talking about asking you to estimate these 3 school renovation projects, how much would that cost us?
We're gonna do it as part of what we've, you know, committed to doing for you at this point, so.
Wow, great.
May I just say something about Newtown Elementary? We've talked about that before. We talked about if we put an addition on that building, it's going to be too large, excuse me, too large of an elementary school.
Yes,
Oh, yes.
yeah.
Right.
Thank you for the reminder.
Don't do that one.
And so,
No,
Not the enlargement, it's more.
Ms. Oseki just mentioned the addition, but no, I think we're just talking about a renovation to Newtown Elementary.
That I got.
Yeah, not an addition.
Yeah, you talked about an addition, we're not.
That,
maybe I heard that wrong. I thought somebody suggested it.
I think.
I did.
No, we heard the same thing, Andy, that's why I was asking.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay,
So no addition,
No addition.
crossing it off, no addition.
Okay.
got it, go on.
I don't have an eraser.
I never heard it.
Yeah. Well, good. We made a decision.
That's what you did. You didn't though. Do you want this, to add in the small addition to Holland Middle?
Yeah.
Welsh, Newtown, and both options for Chancellor? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
I also heard the stadium.
But we have the estimate for the stadium. Do we want to go down?
I can refine it so that we're
Okay.
where we are with the others, so we have a more refined budget for that too. I'm gonna do it for you.
Can we do a low-scale stadium?
Get those, do the others and get that free.
Low scale.
Throw it into.
They're all
Only 50 yards.
Modest stadium.
Like aluminum bleachers instead of concrete,
Aluminum
you
bleachers,
know?
the potties.
I mean, like I keep on saying, I was told that New Hope just renovated their stadium with turf for $2.5 million. Now, I know it only fits 750 people, but it has concessions, it has, you know, facilities and all that and it has the turf.
Okay, yeah, Mr. Rabb.
A couple board members have brought up the cost and the ability to determine what we can afford. There's a lot that goes into that, you know, two of the biggest things would be obviously how much the cost of each project is. Also, the timing of payments the timing of
payments to the construction companies is a huge factor in that. So I don't think we can, like, we gave you a number that was, you know, kind of like the best guess for what we have available. If we had timing of, if we were at a point where we had, you know, a more solid budget and when we would be expecting to make those payments, you know, we would, you know, expect to pay for $5 million for the Newtown renovation in year one. Then we would know our bond issue in year one would be a $5 million bond issue. So that's, I'm just saying that's a huge factor in determining what we can spend. So, you know, and, you know, it's also that the timing of payments can be affected by where the interest rates go. You know, we hope to go up for our investments and we hope to go down for our bond issues.
So you bring up a good point. So when we prepare these estimates, we're gonna have to project when we think these projects are happening so we can build that inflation into these costs as well.
Because then I can sit down with PFM and because they're waiting for me to get back to them with that kind of information, so we can sit down and start putting, and you've seen the plan that they've done in the past with where we need to borrow. And
Yeah, we usually have the draw schedules.
Yeah, the draw schedules, and you give us the draw schedules and we get, you know, and we'll work together on a borrowing schedule. Well, they'll do the borrowing schedule, where I'll pretend that I have input, and then we'll, you know, then we would have a better picture for you of what we can afford and what we can afford.
So for the sake of this exercise, should I make some assumptions of what we would do when we wouldn't do two elementary schools concurrently, we would maybe do Newtown followed by Welsh, and maybe if there's something at Chancellor, that can happen concurrently with Newtown.
Yes.
Because we can start those together.
Yes.
And then Holland Middle School addition, I don't know what your timing is for when that would need to happen. That's certainly its own little thing that could happen, either that first
And that
phase.
would be kind of at the end of these.
Okay,
So you need some guidance on the sequencing.
Yeah, not just how much we're gonna pay, but when we're gonna pay it.
Right.
yeah, 'cause it's how much you're gonna pay when you do this project 3 years from now, because these
Right.
prices are today, but.
And which projects would go in what sequence?
Yeah, and I think I would agree that Newtown Elementary would be first, followed by Wells, concurrent with
This,
this building.
whatever happens at
Whatever happens at Chancellor.
Does that sound, go ahead,
I
Ms.
just want to clarify, because we've got to think about the kids too, and moving them, and then going over to Richboro Middle would have to be, right? Because we would move them out of Newtown?
We
Yeah.
can't,
Big enough.
we can't move from
Oh, you
either
said
school.
that.
We have to phase
You
it.
said that already,
They
that's
both
right.
have to be
So they'd have
phased.
to be phased out. Right,
Yeah.
you said that.
Same
I think we
thing,
wanna-
well,
Yeah.
same thing.
Good question.
Could you move Wells?
All right, so,
So don't,
yeah, good question. So, does that seem like a reasonable sequence to the board? Newtown, Maureen Welsh, Ms. Osick?
I'm not saying no, but I'm just aware, it might be unavoidable, but, you know, there could theoretically be kids at Maureen Welch who will be in trailers or, you know, whatever, and then they'll go to Holland Middle and, you know, be under construction there too. Is there a way to avoid kids having to be at two schools that are undergoing construction?
Holland would be far less significant than what they go through at Welsh. That would be,
It's gonna be on the outside.
talking about a cafeteria addition on the outside that would eventually become a larger cafeteria over a summer. So I mean, we put the addition on while they're in school, but the connections and all that would happen at the time when they're not in the.
That sounds good.
I mean, I'm thinking, it's
Yeah,
probably
not invasive like the last
right,
project.
nothing,
Yeah,
Good point.
good point. Ms. Polly has a question.
Are there economies of scale if we renovate the two schools together?
I'm
Oh,
sorry.
yeah.
Because we have done that in the past. If we renovate the two elementary schools together, do we get better pricing?
You still have to separate the bidding into elementary schools, so you potentially could have 8 different contractors. The only economy of scale you could consider is that, say we do Newtown Elementary and it takes 3 years, and then we do Welsh. Today is the cheapest day to do it. In 3 years, there's obviously an increase of 3 to 5%. So that's really what you would save. You couldn't,
But I would add to that the, every year we wait to borrow money,
yes.
our borrowing power increases. Because right now we're at a surplus in our taxes that get transferred to the debt service fund. That can be used to subsidize years where our debt service might be higher than our transfer to the debt service fund. So that expands our ability to borrow money.
Makes sense.
But if you are to borrow the money away, so does it make a difference?
No, so like if say we started to do two elementary schools next year, and it ended up that we borrowed 10 million rather than 5 million. That would take up all of our debt service that's available in that year, all of our excess debt service that's available, and then. Whereas if we only borrowed 5 million and that took up half of our excess debt service, that's other money that we're putting away, so then later on, when we wanna borrow more money, we can that can be higher because we have excess funds in the debt service funds to cover years where what we have to pay in debt exceeds what we're transferring to debt service.
So when you told us last time that we have about $84 million available in terms of like our borrowing power, that has to happen with a certain like sequence, time sequence?
No, so that is basically when we talked about the 80 million, that was kind of what we have with no other consideration involved. Right, I talked about another amount that got close to 120 million.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about, which gets us to that higher number, where we have the ability to exceed our debt service money. So we're collecting over $20 million right now in debt service in real estate taxes.
Right.
It gets transferred to the debt service fund. But we're only paying 18 million, so we have $2 million that stays in debt service,
Right.
so that at some point we can exceed, because really what you're paying for right now in your debt service is the interest. You start off with minimal payments on your principal. So you're paying that, so you have $2 million, so you borrowed more, but you borrowed more than you borrowed $5 million gets you to your excess in debt service in interest next year. $8 million next year gets you to your max, gets you to over your debt service excess. But because we delayed borrowing money, there's an additional $4 million in there, of which we take $2 million to pay that excess that we don't have to raise taxes to pay for. So that's how it multiplies by every time that you don't borrow money, you're putting money away to pay for other money you can borrow later.
Right.
Delayed.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? Thank you, Mr. Rapp.
I do, just if I,
Dr. Sang?
for 1 second, a little bit unrelated, but to Mr. Hidalgo's earlier question, a few pages back in my notes about the playground adjacent to the Chancellor Center. Before I spoke, I want to make sure I was correct, but that property did belong to the school district. It was given to the borough when this building became the administration building. I want to say it was around 1999 or so, I'm not certain of the date.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you.
We have the deed information for that somewhere in the building, so.
Yeah, I want to take a look.
Well, good. I think that was very productive. Are we good? Mr. Taylor, Mr. Schrader, yeah?
As long as we're doing estimates, I think it's worthwhile to dive in also to the two middle schools. And if these are just on line items, it condenses everything, and we can decide on sequence, and we can decide what's in and what's out from MMW, Newtown E, Chancellor, and the two middle schools.
Two middle schools or the two high schools?
For the two middle schools, for the grade band. Because it's clear, looking at the numbers, there's more need for Holland Middle than there is at Newtown. So I think that it might just bear a little help to just take it out of order of magnitude for both of those as well, so that we are as informed about other things.
I think Mr. Schrader said they're going to do the estimating for the addition to Holland Middle School.
For the 7-8 version.
For the
7-8.
Right.
Well, I don't know which one you were actually referring to.
I was referring to initially the 107 to add 500 to each for both, and to get a little bit tighter on that, to realize, do we really need 500 for Newtown?
You'd have to come up with some sketches or something.
And
that's
right.
So
how heavy a lift is that?
it's going to require a little bit of help from David and team, because we'd have to kind of understand where additions go and how it would work to, at least conceptually, to figure out what kind of costs we're looking at.
Ms. Khan?
I guess the difficulty I have with asking of that ask is then I would throw a wrench in there and say, well, looking at our needs for schools, we have two high schools coming up, north and south, that are at significant costs. So I have a hard time, but now we're going back to, expanding versus narrowing. And I know we're in the facilities master study process, so this conversation clearly isn't done. We can continue the conversation, but I'm just gonna say, I'm gonna throw that out there. If we're gonna do that, then why are we not considering the high schools? Because that's the decision that's not gonna happen overnight.
Do you need sketches to figure out the high schools, or could you?
No.
Well, I think we're expanding this beyond what we need.
That's what my point is.
At this point.
We're available to do those later,
Let's do that later.
happy to do them for you, at some point. I can at least put the plan we just talked about together, put a little Gantt chart with the schedule of how these would look and budgets for each, and come back and give you something a little more, substantial.
So for now, it's the two elementaries, Chancellor, and the addition to Holland Middle. Those are the four for now.
Yes.
Great.
Okay.
Pardon me? Oh, stadium.
Five.
Five.
Okay.
Five. Thank you.
Five.
Thank you, Ms. Binda. All right.
Plus the stadium.
Four plus the stadium.
Well, it's Welsh, it's Newtown L, it's Chancellor's $7 million option, and $16 million.
That's A&B.
Okay.
And
Right.
Holland Middle School addition.
You're counting those.
And then the stadium, so that's 6.
Got it. You counted Chancellor's two.
We'll have to do them both.
All right, good. All right, thank you. If there's nothing else, then we'll go to public comment.
Okay.
Who from the public wishes to speak? Sure, please. All right, and you'll be short, I know. 3 minutes, please.
First of all, I would highly recommend, I know you have been discussing 7th and 8th, but a more immediate problem is going to be the influx of the children in the kindergarten program in the different buildings, and that will happen this year. My second thing is, if we had a meeting about the leaks in the basement, there was an article in the Enquirer about how they are fixing falling water, Frank Lloyd Wright's house. And what they're doing is, there's an Allegheny I called them, Allegheny Concrete Company, and they called me back, and I spoke to an engineer in a local concrete company, and how they're repairing falling waters is it's called liquid grout. And they insert it into the walls. I don't know that much about concrete.
I think he does.
Did you hear of liquid grout?
Yes.
And they're repairing all of, I'm a little nervous. They're repairing all of falling waters $1 million cheaper than Chancellor Street.
Thank you,
So I just want to
Yeah.
mention that.
thank you,
I
thank you.
think, thank you.
2,000 square feet less.
Cheryl Kearns, lifelong resident of Newtown Borough. Again, thanks to the board, administration, CR community for your work, your effort, journeying along with you. Process is not easy. I'd like to remind you, March Madness is nearing the end. Brackets busted long ago. You missed out on the NCAA tournament. Not to worry. It's time for CRSP April Madness. It is the CRSP, Council Rock School Board Selection Committee's opportunity to redo the Chancellor Center option region of your bracket and get it right with the district. This is intended to assist the school board committee with your decisions. I do like the way we're moving this evening. The current options for Chancellor Center's future to be ranked using the CRCCC, standing for Community Classroom Culture Index. Instead of out there, you'll find in today's background using teacher RPI, it's the net for our bracket. Option 1, lease a building for the center. Economically, it's not smart. I'm throwing money away. I hear my dad's words. There's no return on your money for the district, in connection to this district and its history. Another option, the bracket could be give it away or sell it. The problems don't go away. Option 3, convert Bridgeboro Middle into an administration center. Some figures I heard to be quoted. It's not central location, approximate cost is $21 million. Ouch. Option 4, same set for some of the other options that I've heard. An administration center, CR now, we're renovating, constructing a new high school. Again, a lot of discussion on ruling out from my notes, the 6th grade center. If you look at 6, 7, 8, add to a new middle school, they're all gonna cost about $21 million plus, give or take. Every day we wait, it goes up. Option 5, convert Wright County School, the new school is built, moving them out, costing almost $16 million. That problems with location up there, water septic there. Final option I see, repair Chancellor Center. Again, I got some more info tonight on our Water Drive. So I think my original is 7.7. We're now looking at 15 million for all. Quote Mr. Tate, I like that idea. If you're going to do it right. That's my mantra. Again, I see it's urgent in this building due to that ongoing water damage and what's occurring to the building, staff workspaces. The situation is costing our community money. Staff needs to be pulled for their jobs to clean up and do things. Staff cannot address the issues that makes this district work for our students. So I know I'm all about it for our students and our future. We're pulling, even for top down. Mr. Sanko has to be, Dr. Sanko has to be informed of it. Causes interference, let's call out for something. 3? All right.
Oh, I didn't,
Okay, can I finish up or not?
quick.
All right, go fast. I talk fast. Taxpayers are not paying for staff to deal with building issues. These individuals are not being paid to deal with the sorry situation. So I say repairs, seated 1, and again, that's my first ranking. Let's take Chancellor Center to the big dance. Cinderella story is lacking in this year's March Madness. Make it a Cinderella story to remain happily ever after, and win for all of this.
Well, that was great. Thank you.
All right, so
Thanks.
sorry.
No, thank you. Anybody else?
I'm Jenny Broderick, Wrightstown Township resident. I missed the March meeting. We're trying to attend all of these because my interest is more in what you guys are going to decide for the future. concern, of course, is realignment, redistricting. The second grader and the sixth grader, I'm not worried about my sixth grader, we're gonna sit in the north track. I don't think that under any circumstances we would move to the south track. I guess in talking, a lot of this makes my head spin. I'm like not a numbers person, so I'm looking at this and I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't envy you, or this is a lot of decisions, it's a lot of money. I guess I just wanna make sure that I feel like we moved here in 2019, so we missed everything that happened with redistricting. We moved in and thought, oh, this is amazing. Then we started talking to people. There was so much upset people, so much drama that was involved that we had no idea that was a part of it. I'm starting to see that now, that these conversations are starting. So now I get it, I get where the emotion comes from with everybody. And so I do feel like there was a disservice done previously for whoever was responsible for that, with the predicament that some of the schools are in right now. And I really hope that in talking about all of this money and talking about the renovation of the schools, I don't want to come on and be like, I think you did a district. But I think ultimately, and maybe this is happening in another meeting and other discussions, that you really figure out the whole district, what is going to be, somebody had mentioned 10 years down the line, and for 10 years down the line, if you have to move all these kids around, you have to change north, south, no one's going to be happy about that. But like, now is the time to do that. Now is the time to figure out these numbers for these buildings. And so I didn't necessarily I heard a lot of like, capacity for this, capacity for that, but there's still a lot of issues with rates and capacity. We've got Holland Middle, like what about redistricting Richborough, making them north, that's not necessarily a total solution. So really, I think, I can't remember even saying this, but it's like, I feel like you just need to, in this process, I think that you are talking about her, but those numbers need to really be looked at before you can figure out this many kids are going to this school, this many kids, like what is that look like, what is the day care environment? I don't know if that makes any sense, but my concern more is the whole picture when making these big money decisions for these school buildings on the line, so that in 5 years, in 10 years, this isn't something, and I know that it can be challenging to figure out, but that it's not something that you have to worry about again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, I'm Jeffrey Braun from Holland, Pennsylvania. I've been heavily involved with the band programs at Council Rock South. And this kind of goes more towards educational impact and facility usage and planning for the future. This year, our programs, which are highly successful, seem to get displaced a lot for other programs, and it just seems to happen over and over and over again. We're successful in spite of that. However, I think that that's something that should be thought of while thinking about at the high school level, where some of these arts programs can rehearse and practice and do what they need to do to be successful in these established programs. And I don't know if any of you know, but our color guard program is currently 3rd in the country ranked at WGI. And now they're not going to compete at that level this week, which is this weekend, but they are very successful, and they use the Ox Gym for theirs, and it's a gym oriented, and we have an indoor drumline and percussion program, which uses the cafeteria for their rehearsal space. So one of the solutions that I thought of, hiring this guy, I understand it's money, but that courtyard that is kind of no use at the end of South where the arts wing is, what would the cost of that be to infill that for a rehearsal space / use for the arts, not just the band, or it could be used for orchestra, choir, sets building for Golden Wings program or anything like that. You already have 3 walls, you would need a roof and a 4th wall. It would be relatively minimal cost and alleviate a lot of facility conflicts in the building itself. Being involved in the last 8 years, I see it at multiple levels, middle school and high school levels. And that's really what I came here to say. I think it's something that should be investigated, and it could be very beneficial for everybody. Sports, kids, arts kids, because not every kid does either, or both.
Thank you.
Yep.
Good evening, I'm Terry Kiley from Newtown Borough. I really want to commend all the attention and detail that you guys are making to this. I've been at all these meetings, I'm very impressed by all of it. I want to thank the superintendent for making it clear that students are always first on any of these decisions. I would love to see 16 million put to this building to be renovated, but if we need to just do 7 million to make it warm, safe, and dry, students come first. I absolutely agree. I have 3 children who graduated doing well, and I attribute to the fact that this board has always been about taking care of students. I'm hoping that the leasing issue is off the table. If it isn't, more detail needs to be provided. The same amount of detail that's provided on the construction costs needs to be put towards leasing. You can say it's, 800,000 to lease a year. What does it actually cost to adjust that building to meet the needs of the administration? That's an additional cost, plus it's a loss and not an asset. So I would ask, again, and it's not just an emotional issue, it's a financial issue. If you decide to sell this building, if you decide to, God forbid, give it us back to the borough, we're a town, a borough of 4,000 people, I don't know how we would use it. But again, you're left with the decision of where are you going to put the administration? So leasing, or are you going to spend 22 million to add it to a new addition to a building? So again, please continue to put the students first. My children have benefited, and I'm hoping that, to me, what seems like a better financial decision is number one, just make sure you renovate this so this building does not deteriorate further. I have a 90-year-old home. It's always about safe, warm, and dry. That's always my first financial decision. Do I want to spend $1,000 on replacing the window like I've had to do recently and I have a wood home? No. I really don't want to do it. I'd rather redo the carpet in the family room, which badly needs it. But it's about what is keeping that building sound. And thank you again for all the attention and detail you're putting into this project. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Anybody else? If no one else has anything, we're adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Good meeting.